The streets of San Francisco buzzed with life. Yet for Emma, it was a symphony of indifference. She clutched a tattered teddy bear against her chest, its fur worn thin from years of comfort. At just 5 years old, Emma had learned to navigate a world that moved too fast for someone her size, a world that rarely noticed her unless she was in the way. The air was sharp with the cold bite of December, and Emma's thin hoodie offered little protection. She shuffled along the sidewalk, her small frame blending into the shadows of towering skyscrapers. Her stomach growled, a constant reminder of the day's meager meal of half a stale bagel she had scavenged from a trash can near a cafe. As she turned a corner into an alleyway, her eyes caught a glimmer of color. Amid the scattered trash and discarded items lay a brightly colored Rubik's Cube, slightly scuffed but intact. Curiosity tugged at her, and she crouched down to pick it up. Emma turned the cube in her hands, her brow furrowing in concentration. She twisted the rows with her tiny fingers, the motion instinctive, almost mechanical. Within seconds, the jumbled colors began to align, row by row, until the cube was complete. She stared at the solved puzzle, a flicker of pride warming her chest. It wasn't the first time she had solved one. Her father used to give her puzzles to keep her busy while he worked, but that felt like a lifetime ago, back when she had a home, a family, and a warm bed to sleep in. Whoa, did you just do that? The voice startled her. Emma looked up to see a young woman, no older than her early 20s, standing at the entrance of the alley. She had a kind face framed by chestnut hair tied into a loose ponytail. Her eyes widened as she took in the solved Rubik's Cube in Emma's hands. Emma froze, clutching the cube tighter. Adults usually meant trouble, questions, pity, or, worse, interference. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," the woman said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. That was amazing. Do you know how hard those are to solve?" Emma shrugged, not saying a word. The woman stepped closer, her boots crunching softly on the gravel. "My name's Clara. What's yours?" Emma hesitated. "Emma," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emma," Clara repeated with a smile. "Well, Emma, that was seriously impressive. How long did it take you to figure that out?" "Not long," Emma murmured, her gaze darting toward the alley's exit. Clara seemed to sense her unease. She crouched down to Emma's level, her tone gentle. "You're really smart, you know that? I've seen grown-ups struggle with those things for hours." Emma shrugged again, but her fingers tightened around the cube. Clara glanced around the alley, taking in the worn teddy bear, the too-thin hoodie, the way Emma's shoes had holes at the toes. Concern flickered across her face, but she masked it quickly. "Are you out here alone?" Emma didn't answer, her silence confirmation enough. Clara sighed and stood, pulling her phone from her pocket. "Tell you what, there's a diner a block from here. They've got hot chocolate and pancakes that'll knock your socks off. What do you say?" "My treat." Emma's stomach growled loudly at the mention of food, but she hesitated. She had learned long ago that kindness often came with strings attached. Seeing her hesitation, Clara added, "No tricks, I promise. Just food and maybe a little company. You don't have to stay if you don't want to." Emma studied Clara's face, searching for any hint of dishonesty. She found none. Slowly, she nodded. "Great," Clara said, her smile widening. "Let's get out of this cold." As they walked toward the diner, Emma clutched the Rubik's Cube in one hand and her teddy bear in the other. For the first time in a long time, she felt something other than hunger or fear. It was small, fragile, and unfamiliar, but it was hope. They reached the diner, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. Clara held the door open for Emma, who hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside. Neither of them noticed the man sitting in a corner booth, his sharp eyes watching Emma with keen interest. As Emma sipped her hot chocolate, the man in the booth leaned forward, a curious smile playing on his lips. "She's not like other kids," he muttered to himself. The smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air, wrapping around Emma like a comforting blanket. The diner was cozy, its red vinyl booths and checkered floors giving off a retro vibe. For the first time in days, she felt the warmth of indoor heating, and it made her shiver as her body adjusted. Clara guided Emma to a booth near the window, and slid into the seat across from her. "All right, let's get you something good," she said, sliding a menu over. "What do you like? Pancakes? Eggs?" Emma stared at the menu, her fingers tracing the glossy surface. She hadn't held one of these in what felt like forever. "Pancakes," she said softly. "Pancakes it is," Clara said, signaling to a passing waitress. A young waitress with a bright smile approached. "What can I get you?" "Short stack of pancakes with extra syrup for her," Clara said, gesturing to Emma. "And I'll have a coffee, black." The waitress scribbled down the order and gave Emma a warm smile. "Coming right up, sweetheart." Emma's eyes followed the waitress as she walked away, her small frame relaxing just slightly. It felt strange to be in a place like this again, surrounded by warmth and kindness. Clara leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "So, Emma, where are you from? Do you have family nearby?" Emma hesitated, her fingers tightening around the Rubik's Cube still clutched in her hand. "I used to," she said finally. Clara nodded, her expression soft. "I understand. It's okay. You don't have to tell me everything. I just want to make sure you're safe." Safe. The word felt foreign to Emma. She wasn't sure she even knew what it meant anymore. Their conversation was interrupted when the waitress returned with a plate of steaming pancakes and a cup of coffee. Emma's eyes widened as the stack of golden pancakes was placed in front of her, the syrup glistening under the diner's fluorescent lights. "Eat up," Clara said with a smile. Emma didn't need to be told twice. She picked up her fork and began eating, her bites quick and deliberate, as if the food might vanish if she didn't finish it fast enough. Clara watched her with a mix of sadness and admiration. This little girl had clearly been through so much, yet there was something remarkable about her, something more than just her ability to solve puzzles. Across the diner, the man in the corner booth continued to observe them. He was dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap. But there was no mistaking the intensity of his gaze. As Emma devoured her pancakes, Clara couldn't help but ask, "How did you learn to solve that Rubik's Cube so fast? Do you play with puzzles a lot?" Emma looked up, a drop of syrup clinging to the corner of her mouth. "My dad taught me," she said quietly, before he left." Clara's heart clenched. "He must have been pretty smart, too." Emma nodded. "He liked puzzles. He said they make your brain strong." Clara smiled. "He's right. You're really lucky to have a gift like that." Emma didn't respond, her focus shifting back to her plate. Meanwhile, the man in the corner booth pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times. A small smirk played on his lips as he glanced back at Emma. After finishing her meal, Emma leaned back in the booth, her tiny frame looking even smaller against the oversized seat. Clara reached into her purse and pulled out a couple of napkins, handing one to Emma. "Here," Clara said. "You've got syrup everywhere." Emma wiped her mouth and hands, her movements slow and deliberate. For the first time in weeks, she felt full. Just as Clara was about to speak, the man in the corner booth stood up and began walking toward them. His footsteps were deliberate but unhurried, and Clara noticed him out of the corner of her eye. "Oh," she muttered under her breath. The man stopped a few feet away from their table, his hands tucked casually into his pockets. He looked at Emma, then at Clara, his expression curious but not unkind. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I couldn't help but notice your little friend here. She's impressive." Clara's protective instincts flared. She shifted slightly in her seat, placing herself between Emma and the stranger. "Can I help you?" The man chuckled softly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just saw her solve that Rubik's Cube earlier, and it caught my attention. Not many kids her age can do that." Emma's eyes darted between Clara and the man, her small hands gripping the cube tightly. Clara frowned. "She's just a kid. Why do you care?" The man smiled, his gaze settling on Emma. "Because talent like that is rare. And sometimes, rare things lead to extraordinary opportunities." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card, sliding it across the table toward Clara. "If you ever want to talk," he said, his eyes glinting with something that looked like both kindness and calculation. Clara glanced at the card, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw the name printed on it. Clara's hand hovered over the business card, her chest tightening as she read the bold black text. Elon Musk, CEO, SpaceX Tesla Neuralink. She blinked, then glanced up at the man standing before her. His hoodie and cap did little to hide the unmistakable sharpness in his eyes. The man who had been quietly sitting in the corner, watching them, wasn't just some curious diner patron. He was the Elon Musk. Clara tried to keep her composure. "You're Elon Musk?" The man smirked, tilting his head slightly. "Guilty as charged. But today, I'm just a guy who appreciates talent when I see it." He turned his attention to Emma, who was clutching her Rubik's Cube tightly, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Clara's protective instincts kicked in again. Why would someone like you be interested in a little girl solving a puzzle? She's just a kid. Elon's smile softened. She's not just a kid. Solving a Rubik's Cube at her age in seconds is a sign of incredible spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. That's the kind of brain that builds rockets or changes the world. Clara folded her arms, her eyes narrowing. She doesn't need you to change her world. She needs a safe place to sleep and food to eat. Emma looked between Clara and Elon, her small hands trembling slightly as she held the cube closer to her chest. She didn't fully understand the conversation, but she could sense the tension in Clara's voice. Elon raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm not here to take her away or make promises I can't keep. I'm just saying, if you ever want to explore opportunities for her, I can help." Clara's skepticism didn't waver. Opportunities like what? Putting her in some lab to run tests on her brain? Elon chuckled, shaking his head. "Not at all. I support young talent. I have programs that nurture gifted kids, help them reach their full potential. She doesn't have to decide now, or ever." But, he tapped the card on the table, his tone turning serious. "If she's as bright as I think she is, she deserves a chance to do something extraordinary." Clara stared at him, unsure of what to say. Part of her wanted to throw the card back at him, but another part, one she didn't want to acknowledge, wondered if he was right. Emma finally broke the silence. "Why do you care?" she asked softly, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry across the table. Elon crouched down so he was at eye level with her, his expression softening. "Because I know what it's like to feel small in a big world. When I was a kid, people didn't always understand me either. But someone believed in me, and it made all the difference. I see that same spark in you." Emma's brow furrowed, her fingers tracing the edges of the Rubik's Cube. She didn't fully trust him, but there was something in his eyes that didn't feel like pity. It felt like respect. Clara cleared her throat, breaking the moment. "Look, Mr. Musk, I don't know what you're really after, but Emma's been through enough. She doesn't need to be a project or a headline." Elon stood up, slipping his hands back into his pockets. "Fair enough. I respect that. But keep the card. If you ever need anything, resources, connections, even just advice, you know where to find me." He turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. Without looking back, he said, "Take care of her. She's special." As the diner doors swung shut behind him, Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She glanced at Emma, who was still staring at the business card on the table. "Do you know who that was?" Clara asked gently. Emma shook her head. Clara sighed, leaning back in her seat. "That was Elon Musk. He's one of the richest and smartest people in the world." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "Why did he talk to me?" Clara hesitated. "Because he thinks you're smart, too." Emma looked down at the Rubik's Cube in her hands, turning it slowly. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. The possibility that her life could be more than just surviving day to day. Outside the diner, Elon climbed into a sleek black car, his mind already racing. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "Found someone interesting today. A 5-year-old with a mind like no other. Keep an eye on this one." The message was sent to someone only labeled as Project Archimedes. The diner buzzed with the hum of morning chatter, but Clara and Emma sat in silence, the weight of the encounter lingering like a storm cloud. Clara slipped the business card into her pocket, unsure whether she'd ever look at it again. "You okay, kiddo?" Clara asked softly, breaking the quiet. Emma nodded, but her eyes betrayed her unease. Why did he say I'm special? Clara forced a smile. Because you are. You just don't see it yet. Emma didn't respond. She stared down at the Rubik's Cube, turning it absently, her mind a whirl of questions she didn't know how to ask. As they left the diner and stepped into the chilly morning air, Clara felt a subtle shift. Something about Elon's words stuck with her, though she hated to admit it. Maybe Emma did deserve a chance, a real chance, to rise above the hand she'd been dealt. But trust didn't come easily to Clara. She'd seen too many promises broken, too many opportunities turn into traps. They walked toward the park where Clara had found Emma the night before. Emma's tiny hand clutched Clara's jacket, her grip firm as if afraid she'd lose her newfound safety. Just as Clara was about to suggest sitting on a bench to plan their next move, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The tinted window rolled down, and a man in a tailored suit leaned out, his expression neutral but authoritative. "Clara Sullivan?" he asked, his voice calm but commanding. Clara froze, instinctively stepping in front of Emma. "Who's asking?" The man held up a badge. "Andrew Blake. I work for Mr. Musk. May I have a word?" Clara's eyes narrowed. He already said what he needed to say. "We're not interested." Blake nodded, unfazed. "I understand your hesitation. But Mr. Musk asked me to extend an offer, a no-strings-attached opportunity to provide Emma with resources to explore her talents. Nothing more." Clara folded her arms. "And what exactly does resources mean?" Blake gestured toward the car. "We'd like to invite you both to visit a private educational facility in the city. Emma could meet with some of the best educators and child psychologists in the country. They'd assess her strengths and help her grow, at her pace, and only if she's comfortable." Emma peeked out from behind Clara, her curiosity piqued despite her apprehension. "What kind of place?" she asked quietly. Blake's demeanor softened as he addressed her directly. "It's like a school, but for kids who think differently. You'd get to solve puzzles, build things, even play games that challenge your mind. And if you don't like it, you don't have to stay." Clara looked down at Emma, who was staring at Blake with wide eyes. The idea clearly intrigued her, but Clara wasn't convinced. "Look, Mr. Blake," Clara said firmly, "I appreciate the offer, but Emma's been through a lot. She doesn't need strangers poking around in her life." Blake nodded, his expression understanding. "I respect that, but please, consider it. The invitation is open-ended. Here's my card." He handed it to Clara, then opened the car door. "If you decide to visit, just call that number. We'll arrange everything." With that, he stepped into the car and drove off, leaving Clara and Emma standing on the sidewalk, a heavy silence settling between them. Emma tugged on Clara's sleeve. "What if it's a good place?" Clara crouched down to meet her gaze. "Maybe it is, but I've learned that good places can come with strings attached. I just want to make sure you're safe, okay?" Emma nodded, though her curiosity lingered. Later that evening, as they sat in a small shelter Clara had found for the night, Emma worked on her Rubik's Cube while Clara stared at the business card in her hand. The name, Andrew Blake, stared back at her, and the words educational initiative sparked a flicker of doubt. She turned to Emma, who was solving her cube for the 5th time in a row. "Do you really want to see this place?" Emma paused, her tiny hands stilling. "Maybe," she said hesitantly. "If it's a good place, maybe I can learn stuff. And maybe they have more puzzles." Clara chuckled despite herself. "You and your puzzles." Emma smiled for the first time in what felt like days, and Clara's resolve wavered. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to at least check it out. Clara picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. As the line connected, a cheerful voice answered, "You've reached Project Archimedes. How can I assist you?" Clara's breath caught. Project Archimedes? What exactly are they getting into? The next morning, Clara found herself gripping Emma's hand tightly as they stood in front of a sleek glass building downtown. The words, Project Archimedes, were etched in silver letters above the entrance, catching the morning sunlight. "I don't know about this," Clara muttered under her breath, glancing down at Emma. Emma, clutching her Rubik's Cube like a lifeline, stared up at the towering structure, her eyes filled with a mix of wonder and apprehension. "It looks like a building from one of those superhero movies," she whispered. Clara smirked despite her nerves. Let's hope it's not a villain's lair. They were met at the entrance by Andrew Blake, the man who had approached them the day before. Today, he wore a more casual outfit, no suit, just a button-up shirt and slacks, perhaps an attempt to appear less intimidating. "Miss Sullivan, Emma," he greeted warmly, extending a hand. "I'm glad you decided to visit. This is just a tour. No pressure, no commitments." Clara hesitated before shaking his hand. "We're just here to look. That's all." "Of course." Blake gestured toward the glass doors, which slid open silently as they approached. Inside, the atmosphere was a blend of high-tech sophistication and warmth. The lobby was open and airy, with modern furniture and walls adorned with artwork created by children. A holographic display in the center showcased rotating models of solar systems, geometric puzzles, and famous inventions. Emma's eyes widened as she took it all in. "Wow," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Clara, ever cautious, scanned the room for any signs that this might be more than it seemed. "It's nice," she admitted reluctantly. Blake led them to an elevator, which took them up to the 4th floor. When the doors opened, they stepped into a bustling but quiet space filled with children of various ages. Some were building intricate models with robotics kits, others were programming games on computers, and a few were solving complex puzzles on large touchscreens. "This is one of our activity centers," Blake explained. "We tailor the environment to each child's interests and strengths. They're encouraged to explore and create at their own pace." Emma was mesmerized, her gaze darting from one station to the next. Her fingers twitched as if itching to join in. A young woman with a friendly smile approached them. "Hi, you must be Emma," she said, kneeling to Emma's level. "I'm Dr. Natalie Rivera, one of the educators here. Would you like to try something fun?" Emma glanced up at Clara, who nodded hesitantly. "Okay," she said softly. Dr. Rivera led Emma to a table where several puzzles were laid out. "These are special puzzles we designed," she explained. "Some are about patterns, others about logic. Pick whichever one you like." Emma's eyes lit up as she reached for a puzzle that looked like a 3D maze. She began turning the pieces over in her hands, studying them with intense focus. While Emma worked, Blake guided Clara to a nearby seating area. "As you can see," he began, "we're not just a school. We're a place where kids like Emma can thrive without the constraints of traditional systems." Clara crossed her arms. "Sounds too good to be true. What's the catch?" Blake smiled faintly. "There's no catch. Elon Musk started this initiative to support young minds, especially those who might not otherwise have access to opportunities like this. He funds it entirely, so there's no cost to families." Clara's skepticism remained, but she couldn't deny the change she saw in Emma. The little girl, who had spent most of her days surviving, now looked fully alive as she tackled the maze puzzle with an almost joyful determination. After about 20 minutes, Dr. Rivera returned with Emma, who was holding the completed maze in her hands. "She's quick," Rivera said with a grin. "It's rare for someone her age to solve that puzzle so fast." Emma beamed up at Clara. "It was fun." Clara felt a pang of something. Hope, perhaps. But she kept her guard up. "That's great, sweetie. But we're just visiting." Blake didn't push. "Of course. Why don't we take a look at one more thing before you go?" He led them to a small room with a glass wall overlooking the city. Inside was a simple setup, a table, a few chairs, and a chessboard. "This is where we sometimes meet one-on-one with kids to understand their thought processes better," he explained. Dr. Rivera knelt down to Emma's level again. "Do you like games like chess?" Emma shook her head. "I've never played." Rivera smiled. "That's okay. How about we teach you? It's a game of strategy, kind of like solving puzzles." Emma hesitated, then nodded. As Rivera began explaining the rules, Clara couldn't help but notice how attentive Emma was. She wasn't just listening. She was absorbing every word, every move. It was as if she had been waiting her whole life for someone to unlock this part of her. Just as Clara began to let her guard down, Blake's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression tightening briefly before he turned to Clara. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping away. On the other side of the room, Blake answered the call. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. "They're here." And you were right. The girl is exceptional. What's the next step? He paused, listening. Then his eyes flicked toward Clara and Emma, his voice lowering. Understood. I'll handle it. Clara's instincts flared as she caught the tail end of Blake's phone call. His calm demeanor had shifted, just enough to set her on edge. She couldn't hear his exact words, but his posture, the slight tightening of his jaw, the way he glanced back at her and Emma, told her something wasn't quite right. Emma, oblivious, was engrossed in learning chess with Dr. Rivera. Her tiny fingers moved a pawn forward as Rivera smiled, encouraging her. Clara's heart softened seeing Emma's rare moment of happiness, but a knot of unease formed in her stomach. When Blake returned, his professional smile was firmly in place. Sorry about that, he said smoothly. Let's wrap up the tour, shall we? Clara forced a smile but didn't reply, her eyes narrowing. Blake led them down a corridor lined with doors. He gestured toward one that stood slightly ajar, revealing what looked like a cozy lounge. This is where we meet with parents or guardians to discuss opportunities. Would you mind stepping in for a moment? Clara hesitated. What for? Just to share a bit more about what we do and answer any questions you might have, Blake replied, his tone calm but persuasive. Clara looked down at Emma, who was still clutching her Rubik's Cube. You okay waiting here for a minute, kiddo? Emma nodded, her gaze darting back to the chessboard as if she couldn't wait to finish the game. Inside the lounge, Clara took a seat opposite Blake. The room was inviting, with warm lighting and a view of the city skyline. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being under a microscope. Miss Sullivan, Blake began, folding his hands on the table. We see children like Emma very rarely. Her abilities are extraordinary, especially given her circumstances. We believe she could achieve great things. Clara raised an eyebrow. And what's in it for you? Blake leaned back slightly, his expression neutral. Our only goal is to nurture potential. Elon Musk created this program because he believes that untapped genius exists in the most unexpected places. Emma is one of those cases. Clara crossed her arms. Let's cut to the chase. What exactly are you offering? Blake's smile didn't waver. We want to enroll Emma in our advanced development program. She'd have access to world-class educators, state-of-the-art resources, and a community of like-minded peers. Everything would be covered: tuition, housing, meals. You'd both have a place here, safe and secure. Clara froze. Housing? Are you saying I'd have to move here? It's an option, Blake said carefully, but not a requirement. You could stay elsewhere while Emma participates in the program. We provide transportation and ensure you remain connected every step of the way. Clara's heart raced. The offer sounded too good to be true, and in her experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. I'm not sure about this, she said finally. Emma's been through a lot. Uprooting her again might do more harm than good. Blake nodded, his gaze steady. I understand your concern. That's why we'd never pressure you into making a decision. Take your time. Talk it over with Emma. We're here to support you, no matter what you decide. Before Clara could respond, a soft knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Rivera peeked in, her face lit with excitement. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have to see this. Blake stood, his curiosity piqued. What's going on? Rivera's smile widened. Emma, she's just started playing chess, but, well, you need to see for yourself. Clara followed Blake and Rivera back to the activity room, her apprehension growing with every step. When they arrived, Emma was sitting across from a teenage boy who was clearly an experienced player. A small crowd of students and instructors had gathered around them, watching intently. Emma's brow furrowed in concentration as she moved her bishop. The boy hesitated, studying the board with increasing frustration. After a few more moves, he groaned and tipped his king over. She beat me, he said, half in disbelief. The onlookers clapped softly, murmuring in awe. Clara's jaw dropped. Emma, did you just win? Emma looked up, her cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and surprise. I guess so, she said shyly. Dr. Rivera knelt beside her, beaming. That was incredible, Emma. Most beginners don't even make it through a game on their first try, let alone win. You've got a natural talent for strategy. Blake turned to Clara, his expression filled with quiet triumph. This is exactly what I meant. Imagine what Emma could do with the right guidance. Clara's head spun. Seeing Emma so confident and engaged was a stark contrast to the quiet, reserved child she'd been. But doubts still gnawed at her. Could she really trust these people with Emma's future? As Clara wrestled with her decision, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and froze when she saw the caller ID. Elon Musk? Blake noticed her hesitation and nodded toward the phone. You should answer that. Clara hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. Hello? Elon's unmistakable voice came through, calm but commanding. Miss Sullivan, I believe we need to talk about Emma and about what's next. Clara's heart pounded as she clutched the phone. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. She had heard Elon Musk speak countless times in interviews and on the news, but never had she imagined she'd be speaking to him directly. Miss Sullivan, Elon began, his tone calm but firm. I hope you're finding your visit to Project Archimedes insightful. Clara glanced over at Emma, who was now surrounded by children and instructors, basking in an unfamiliar glow of attention. It's been a lot to take in, she replied, her voice wary. I'm not sure what to think yet. I understand your hesitation, Elon said. I wouldn't blame you for being cautious. You've had to fight for Emma's safety and well-being, and that kind of vigilance doesn't go away overnight. Clara blinked, taken aback by the directness of his words. You seem to know a lot about us, she said cautiously. I do, Elon admitted. When Andrew Blake informed me about Emma, I asked him to share her background. Not to intrude, but because I wanted to understand what drives her. What drives you? Clara's grip on the phone tightened. And what exactly do you want from her? Elon's voice softened. Emma is extraordinary, not just because of her natural abilities, but because she's resilient. She's survived situations that would break most people, and yet she's here, thriving in her own way. That kind of brilliance, paired with that kind of strength, is rare. I want to give her a chance to harness it. Clara glanced back at Emma, who was now deep in conversation with Dr. Rivera. For a moment, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Emma looked truly happy. I'm not sure I can trust this, Clara said finally, her voice heavy. Every time someone's offered to help, it's come with strings attached. What's in it for you? Elon chuckled softly. Fair question. For me, it's simple. I believe the future is built by brilliant minds, no matter where they come from. Emma has the potential to change the world, but only if she's given the tools to do so. That's why I started Project Archimedes, to find and nurture kids like her. Clara paused, her thoughts racing. And what happens if we say no? If I decide this isn't right for her? That's entirely up to you, Elon said. I won't force anything, but I'll tell you this. If you walk away, Emma will still be brilliant, still be resilient. But the road ahead will be much harder. Here, she'd have resources, mentors, and a safe environment to grow. Outside, the world can be unforgiving. The weight of his words hung in the air. Clara felt the enormity of the decision pressing down on her. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Elon replied. Take all the time you need. But I'd like to meet you both in person before you decide. Would tomorrow work? Clara's breath hitched. You want to meet us? Why? To understand, Elon said simply. Emma isn't just another number in a program to me. I want to see her potential firsthand and answer any questions you might have. Clara hesitated, glancing at Emma again. The little girl was laughing now, her face alight with a joy Clara hadn't seen in years. All right, Clara said slowly. Tomorrow. Good, Elon said. Andrew will make the arrangements. And Clara? Yes. You're doing an incredible job, he said softly. Whatever you decide, Emma is lucky to have you. The call ended, leaving Clara feeling a mix of emotions. Gratitude, suspicion, hope, and fear all tangled together. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, her mind spinning. Blake approached, his expression unreadable. Everything all right? Clara nodded slowly. He wants to meet us. Tomorrow. Blake smiled faintly. That's a good sign. I'm still not sure about any of this, Clara said. her voice laced with uncertainty. Blake gestured toward Emma. Take a look at her, Miss Sullivan. She's already thriving here, even in just a few hours. Imagine what she could do with more time. Clara looked back at Emma, her heart aching with the weight of the decision she had to make. That night, as Clara tucked Emma into bed in their small apartment, Emma looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Mommy, do you think I could be a scientist one day?" she asked softly. Clara's throat tightened. "Of course you can, sweetheart," she said, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. But as Emma drifted off to sleep, Clara stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, grappling with the question that refused to leave her mind. Could she really trust Elon Musk with her daughter's future? The next morning arrived with an unsettling mix of excitement and dread. Clara could hardly sleep the night before, her mind racing with questions and doubts. But Emma, unbothered by the gravity of the situation, woke up brimming with curiosity about their upcoming meeting. "Do you think he'll be nice, Mommy?" Emma asked as she tied her shoelaces, her tiny hands fumbling a bit. Clara forced a smile. "I guess we'll find out soon enough." The arrangements had been seamless, as if Elon Musk's team had anticipated her every need. A sleek, black car arrived at their modest apartment precisely at 9 a.m. Clara hesitated as she glanced at the driver, who stood by the door in a neatly pressed suit, offering a polite nod. "Ready, Emma?" Clara asked, gripping her daughter's hand tightly. Emma beamed. "Ready." The drive was quiet, almost eerily so. Clara gazed out of the window, taking in the city as they sped past. Emma clutched her Rubik's Cube, twisting it absent-mindedly, while Clara's mind churned with questions. What would Elon Musk be like in person? Was this another polished sales pitch, or did he truly care about Emma's potential? They arrived at an unassuming building downtown, its modern glass exterior reflecting the morning sunlight. Blake was waiting for them at the entrance, his ever-present smile in place. "Good morning," he greeted warmly. "Mr. Musk is expecting you. Please, follow me." Clara and Emma exchanged a glance before stepping inside. The lobby was surprisingly understated, clean, minimalist, and efficient. A receptionist greeted them, then gestured toward a private elevator. "He's on the top floor," Blake explained as they stepped into the elevator. The ride was silent, the hum of the elevator amplifying Clara's anxiety. Emma, however, seemed fascinated, her wide eyes taking in every detail. When the doors opened, they stepped into a spacious yet cozy office. It wasn't at all what Clara had expected. Instead of a sterile, corporate environment, the room felt warm and inviting. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with everything from classic literature to complex engineering manuals. A telescope stood by the window, aimed at the sky, and a model of SpaceX's Starship rested on a polished desk. And there he was. Elon Musk stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, gazing out at the city below. At the sound of their footsteps, he turned, offering a warm smile that seemed to disarm Clara's nerves, if only slightly. "Miss Sullivan," he said, extending a hand. "And you must be Emma." Emma stepped forward shyly, clutching Clara's leg. "Hi," she said softly. Elon crouched slightly to meet her eye level. "It's very nice to meet you, Emma. I hear you're quite the genius with puzzles." Emma's face lit up. "I like solving things," she said, holding up her Rubik's Cube. "It's fun." Elon chuckled. "That's the best way to learn, by having fun. Do you mind if I take a look?" Emma hesitated for a moment, then handed him the cube. Elon turned it over in his hands, studying it briefly before twisting it a few times and handing it back. "Pretty impressive," he said. "I can see why everyone's so amazed by you." Clara watched the exchange, her skepticism easing ever so slightly. Elon stood and gestured toward a seating area by the window. "Please have a seat," he said. As they settled in, Elon leaned forward, his demeanor shifting to one of sincerity. "Clara, I wanted to meet you and Emma in person because I know this decision isn't easy. I don't take lightly the idea of asking you to trust us with her future." Clara nodded cautiously. "You're right, it's not easy. I've spent years protecting her from people who only wanted to use her. How do I know this isn't the same?" Elon's gaze softened. "You don't. And I can't promise you that life here will be perfect. But what I can promise is that Emma will have every opportunity to grow into the incredible person she's meant to be. Our program isn't just about academics. It's about nurturing creativity, resilience, and kindness, qualities she already has in abundance. Emma, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. Will I still get to see Mommy? Elon smiled gently. Of course. Your mom is your biggest supporter, and that won't change. She'll always be a part of your journey. Clara's throat tightened. She looked at Elon, searching for any hint of insincerity, but found none. Why do you care so much? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon leaned back, his expression contemplative. Because I was once a kid who felt out of place. I didn't have anyone to nurture my curiosity or encourage me to dream big. I had to find my own way. If I can make that path easier for kids like Emma, I feel it's my responsibility to do so. For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Before Clara could respond, a voice crackled through the intercom. Mr. Musk, there's a situation with one of the projects. Your immediate attention is required. Elon sighed, his gaze apologetic. I'm sorry to cut this short, but duty calls. Please take your time. Think it over. Whatever decision you make, we'll respect it. As he rose to leave, he turned to Emma, a twinkle in his eye. One last thing, Emma. Don't ever stop solving puzzles. The world needs minds like yours. Emma grinned, clutching her Rubik's Cube tightly. As Elon stepped out, Clara sat back, her mind a storm of emotions. Could she truly trust this man with her daughter's future? After the meeting, Clara and Emma were escorted to a quiet lounge adjacent to Elon's office. The walls were lined with art that depicted humanity's progress, rocket launches, scientific discoveries, and even abstract paintings of constellations. It was peaceful, yet Clara's mind was far from calm. Emma was still buzzing with excitement, playing with her Rubik's Cube as she babbled about Elon. He's really smart, Mommy, and he knows about puzzles. Do you think he likes space as much as I do? Clara forced a smile. I think he does, sweetheart. Probably even more. But inwardly, she felt torn. Elon Musk had said all the right things, and yet Clara couldn't shake her doubts. His words had been sincere, but sincerity didn't always guarantee safety. Emma's life had already been filled with too much uncertainty. Could Clara really afford to gamble with her daughter's future? Andrew Blake entered the room, breaking her thoughts. He carried 2 cups of hot chocolate, handing one to Emma and one to Clara. I thought you both might need this, he said warmly. Emma lit up, gripping the cup with her tiny hands. Thank you, Mr. Blake. Andrew chuckled. You're very welcome, Emma. And please, just call me Andrew. Clara took a sip of her drink, the warmth doing little to ease the tension in her chest. Andrew sat down across from her, his expression kind but serious. Clara, I can see you're struggling with this decision, he began. I don't blame you. It's a lot to process. You think, Clara said, her tone sharper than intended. This isn't just a program for Emma. This is her life we're talking about. How am I supposed to trust anyone with something so important? Andrew nodded, unflinching. You're right. It is her life. And that's why we're doing everything we can to be transparent. You're not just handing her over to us, Clara. You'd still be a part of her journey. This isn't about taking her away from you. It's about giving her opportunities she might not have otherwise. Clara set her cup down, leaning forward. But what if this isn't what she needs? What if all this pressure, these expectations, ends up hurting her instead of helping? Andrew hesitated, choosing his words carefully. There's no denying that programs like this can be intense. But Emma isn't like other children. She thrives on challenges. You've seen it yourself, her curiosity, her hunger for knowledge. She doesn't just want to learn. She needs to. This program isn't about forcing her into a mold. It's about giving her the tools to explore and create on her own terms. Clara sighed, rubbing her temples. And what happens if it doesn't work out? What if she's overwhelmed, or she decides this isn't what she wants? Andrew smiled reassuringly. Then we'll adapt. This program isn't a prison, Clara. If Emma ever feels like it's not right for her, we'll work with you to find a better path. Our goal isn't to control her, it's to support her. Emma, who had been quietly sipping her hot chocolate, suddenly looked up. Mommy, I like it here, she said softly. The people are nice, and they have cool stuff to learn. Can we stay? Clara's heart clenched at the earnestness in her daughter's voice. She looked into Emma's wide, hopeful eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in years, a spark of possibility. But possibility wasn't enough to banish her fears. I need more time, Clara said, her voice firm. This isn't a decision I can make overnight. Andrew nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. We're not rushing you. The conversation ended on a tentative note, and soon Clara and Emma were escorted back to the car. The drive home was quiet, Emma dozing off in the seat beside her while Clara stared out the window, lost in thought. That evening, Clara sat on the couch, flipping through a binder of information Andrew had given her. It outlined everything about the program, the curriculum, the mentors, the support systems. On paper, it all seemed perfect, but Clara couldn't stop her mind from wandering to all the what-ifs. The sound of Emma's soft snores broke her concentration. Clara looked over at her daughter, curled up under a blanket, her Rubik's Cube still clutched in one hand. I just want what's best for you, Clara whispered. As Clara turned back to the binder, a small envelope tucked inside caught her eye. Curious, she opened it and found a handwritten note. It read, Clara, whatever you decide, know that you're not alone in this. Emma's future is bright, and it's because of you. Elon. For the first time, Clara felt a flicker of hope and a twinge of fear. Could she trust him? Or was this just another carefully crafted promise? The next few days passed in a blur of uncertainty for Clara. Every time she tried to focus on work or the small tasks around the house, her mind wandered back to the decision she had to make. Emma was still full of excitement about the idea of joining the program, but Clara couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was overlooking something important. Late one evening, after Emma had fallen asleep, Clara sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the note Elon had left for her. It was simple, just a few words written by hand, but something about it lingered in her mind. Emma's future is bright, and it's because of you. The note echoed in Clara's thoughts, a reminder that she had always done her best to protect Emma. But was that enough? Could she protect her from the pressures of a world that didn't seem to care for the delicate balance between genius and childhood? Clara was interrupted by the sudden sound of her phone vibrating on the counter. It was a message from Andrew Blake. Elon wanted me to check in. We understand this is a big decision, and we're here if you need more information or just want to talk. Take care of yourself, too. This isn't just about Emma, it's about you, too. Clara read the message several times, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What could she say? She had so many questions, so many fears, but she didn't know how to articulate them without sounding desperate or ungrateful. She typed a reply. Thank you, Andrew. I'm still thinking. I just want to be sure it's the right choice for Emma. I don't want to rush into anything. A few moments later, Andrew responded. I completely understand. If you ever want to meet again, just the two of us, I'd be happy to sit down and answer any lingering questions you have. We're in this together, Clara. Clara sat back in her chair, contemplating his words. Could she really trust them? Was this just another slick business move, or did they genuinely believe in Emma's potential? The next morning, Emma woke up with her usual infectious energy. She skipped around the apartment, asking Clara excitedly about all the cool things she could learn at the program. Clara couldn't help but smile at her daughter's enthusiasm. But then Emma stopped in her tracks, looking at Clara with a serious expression. Mommy, what if I don't like it there? What if I want to come home? Clara's heart ached. She had never wanted Emma to feel trapped, not even for a second. Sweetheart, she said softly, kneeling down to her level. If you ever don't like it, if it's too much, or you feel like you want to come home, we'll talk. You can always come back. Emma's eyes brightened, and she threw her arms around Clara. Thanks, Mommy. I know you always know what's best. Those words echoed in Clara's mind all day. She had always tried to make the best choices for Emma, even when it seemed impossible. Was this one of those choices? By evening, Clara had made up her mind to meet with Andrew again. It was the only way she could truly weigh the decision. She needed to know more about the program, about the people who ran it, and whether or not it was truly what Emma needed. The following day, Clara arrived at the office building once more, her heart pounding in her chest. Andrew greeted her warmly in the lobby and led her to a small meeting room. "I'm glad you came back," he said as they sat down. "I know this is a lot to take in, but we're here for you, Clara. Whatever you need to make the right decision." Clara took a deep breath. "I need to know that this isn't just a way to make Emma another success story for your organization. I need to know that she'll have the space to be herself, growing, learning, but still living." Andrew leaned forward, his tone earnest. "Clara, we're not trying to mold her into something she isn't. We're trying to give her the tools to shape her own future. There's no one-size-fits-all path here. If Emma wants to take a break, if she wants to explore something else, we'll support her every step of the way." Clara felt a flicker of hope. And what about her social life? Will she have friends? Will she still be able to experience things like a normal kid? Andrew smiled. "Absolutely. That's a big part of what we focus on. Emma will be surrounded by kids who are just as curious, just as eager to explore. But she'll still have room to be a child. She'll go to playdates, take art classes, go on field trips. It's not all about academics." Clara's heart softened. She hadn't realized just how much she needed to hear those words. "So, you're saying she'll be able to have both?" "Exactly," Andrew said. "She'll grow intellectually, but she'll also grow emotionally, socially. It's a well-rounded experience." Clara sat in silence for a moment, thinking of Emma, her little mind brimming with potential. Could she really say no to a future where Emma had the chance to explore everything she was capable of? As Clara stood to leave, Andrew handed her another envelope. "This is a final piece of information," he said. "It's an invitation to a special event where you can meet some of the other parents and see the program in action. It may help you decide what's best for Emma." Clara looked at the envelope, hesitating. Another step closer to making the decision. But would this event be the thing that finally helped her see the truth? Or would it just leave her with more questions? The invitation Andrew had given Clara seemed to glow in her hands the next day. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of what could be a new beginning for Emma. She had spent the night wrestling with the idea, but today, she knew she needed to take the next step. She had to see it for herself, feel the atmosphere of the program, and see how it affected other families before she could make a decision. Emma was buzzing with excitement as Clara prepared for the event. She had woken up early, unable to contain her enthusiasm, asking Clara a dozen questions in rapid-fire succession. "Mommy, is it today? Are we going to see the other kids? Will I get to see the puzzles and the rockets?" Clara smiled, though her heart was heavy. "Yes, sweetheart, it's today. You'll get to meet the other kids, see the labs, and maybe even some of the things you'll be learning." Emma grinned, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "I'm so excited. I want to meet everyone. I hope they like me." Clara's voice caught as she replied, "I'm sure they will, honey. But remember, this is just a visit. We're still figuring things out." Emma nodded, but her eagerness was impossible to miss. The event was held in a sleek, modern building that seemed to hum with energy. From the moment Clara and Emma stepped inside, they were met by a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Families milled about, chatting and laughing. Clara's eyes swept across the room, taking in the diversity of people. Parents with young children, older teens, a few who seemed to have been through the program already. There was an air of anticipation, a quiet hum of excitement, but also an underlying calmness. Andrew met them in the lobby, his smile wide but professional. "Clara, Emma, welcome. I'm so glad you could make it today." "Thank you for inviting us," Clara said, her voice laced with cautious curiosity. Andrew guided them through the building, offering a tour of various areas. There were open spaces with children collaborating on projects, some coding, some building, and others working on mechanical puzzles. Everywhere Clara looked, there was a sense of focus and purpose, but also laughter and camaraderie. It was clear that the program wasn't just about academic achievement. It was about fostering a sense of belonging, creativity, and personal growth. "Look, Mommy," Emma exclaimed, tugging at Clara's sleeve. "That girl's building a rocket." Clara followed her gaze to see a group of children huddled around a large model of a rocket, carefully attaching pieces to it. The focus on their faces was both intense and joyful. For a moment, Clara allowed herself to feel the same thrill Emma was experiencing. They continued through the halls, and Clara began to feel herself soften. She could see Emma in this environment, surrounded by other kids who shared her curiosity, her hunger to explore. Emma's excitement was contagious, and Clara's own doubts began to melt away. They stopped in front of a room where a group of teenagers was discussing a new artificial intelligence project. Clara watched as one of the mentors, a woman in her 30s, expertly guided the conversation, encouraging the teens to think critically while allowing them to lead the discussion. There was a sense of respect between the mentors and the students, a mutual understanding that these young minds were capable of far more than anyone had given them credit for. "This is one of our advanced AI programs," Andrew explained. "The kids here get to develop their own algorithms, and sometimes even present them to experts in the field. It's all about pushing boundaries." Clara took it all in. For the first time, she could see the program not as a distant, intimidating prospect but as a tangible opportunity for Emma. The mentorship, the exposure to cutting-edge technology, the chance to be surrounded by like-minded peers, these weren't just privileges. They were tools for shaping Emma into the person she could become. But the question still lingered in Clara's mind. Would this really be the right place for Emma? She could see the possibilities, but what about the risks? Was it worth the chance? Andrew seemed to sense her hesitation and stopped in front of a large, glass-walled room. Inside, a group of children was working on a massive jigsaw puzzle, with pieces scattered all over the floor. A few kids were on their hands and knees, carefully fitting pieces together, while others were sketching out ideas on notepads. "This is one of the team-building exercises we do," Andrew said, his tone softening. "It's about problem-solving, collaboration, and patience. It's not just about getting things done fast. It's about working together and learning how to adapt to different situations." Clara's gaze shifted to Emma, who was already drawn to the puzzle, her eyes wide with wonder. Emma had always loved challenges like this, and Clara could see her daughter's mind whirring as she assessed the pieces. "Mommy, can I help them?" Emma asked, her voice full of excitement. Clara nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, sweetheart, you can." Emma eagerly joined the group, quickly finding her place among the children. Clara watched as her daughter dived into the puzzle, her focus intense, her small hands moving with purpose. It was a moment of pure joy, a glimpse of the future that could be waiting for Emma. As the tour came to an end, Clara found herself deep in thought. She knew she couldn't make a decision in the moment, but she could no longer deny the possibilities. The environment here was exactly what Emma needed, a place where she could grow and thrive, surrounded by mentors who respected her intellect and peers who would challenge her. As they made their way back to the entrance, Andrew turned to Clara. "How are you feeling, Clara? Do you see what we're trying to build here?" Clara met his gaze, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I see it. I see everything. And I can't pretend I'm not tempted." Andrew nodded, understanding. "It's a big decision, and it's not easy. But whatever you decide, we'll be here to support you." Clara took a deep breath. "I need more time, but I think we're getting closer." As they stepped out into the parking lot, Clara's phone buzzed with an unexpected message. It was from Elon Musk himself. "Clara, I hope the event gave you a better idea of what we're offering. I'd love to meet you again soon, just the two of us. I want to discuss the next steps, if you're ready. Let me know. Elon." Clara stared at the message, her heart racing. This was it, the moment that would decide everything for Emma. Would this be the final push she needed, or would it lead her down a path she couldn't turn back from? Clara smiled, trying to steady her nerves. She had met powerful people before, but there was something about Elon's presence that made everything feel more intense. She sat down, feeling the gravity of the moment. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," Clara began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. "I've seen the program, I've talked to Andrew, but I still have a lot of questions. I need to be absolutely sure this is the right choice for Emma." Elon leaned back in his chair, his hands folded in front of him. I completely understand. The decision you're making is huge, and it should not be rushed. But let me tell you something you may not know. Clara raised an eyebrow. What's that? He looked at her intently. This isn't just about giving Emma access to resources. It's about giving her the right resources. Resources that will push her further, faster, and farther than she could imagine. This is an opportunity that could change her life, and I believe it's the right one. But it has to be her choice. We won't push her into anything. Clara felt a stir of emotion in her chest. She had heard Andrew say something similar, but hearing it from Elon himself gave it a new weight. He wasn't just selling her an idea. He truly believed in what they were offering. And for the first time, Clara started to believe it too. What do you mean by her choice? Clara asked. Elon smiled slightly, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of wisdom and something else, something deeper. Emma is more than a child prodigy. She's a person with her own thoughts, dreams, and fears. Yes, she's brilliant. But that doesn't mean she should be forced into a mold. She needs to have a say in her journey. We're here to provide her with options, but at the end of the day, she decides where she wants to go with it. Clara let that sink in. It was the reassurance she needed. Emma wasn't just a project or a case study. She was a person who would have the space to grow, to choose her own path, even within the confines of a program that was unlike anything most children would experience. I understand, Clara said softly, but what about the pressure? What if it's too much for her? I don't want her to feel like she has to be perfect. Elon's expression softened. We don't want that either. Perfection isn't the goal. The goal is growth, growth at her pace, in her way. It's about nurturing her passion and curiosity, not placing an unrealistic burden on her shoulders. I've seen the toll that can take on people. We're not going down that road. Clara felt the tension in her chest start to ease. For the first time, she felt like she was hearing the truth. No grand promises, no overblown sales pitches. Just a vision for Emma's future, grounded in what Clara had always wanted for her. Freedom to explore, to learn, and to be herself. I need to think, Clara said after a long pause. I can see the potential, but it's a lot to take in. I can't rush into this decision. Emma's future is too important. Elon nodded, his face unchanging. Of course. I'm not here to pressure you. But know that the door is open. When you're ready, we're here. They sat in silence for a moment, both of them absorbing the weight of the conversation. Finally, Clara stood, feeling a sense of clarity settle over her. She had a lot to consider, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path, like the decision would come when the time was right. I'll be in touch, Clara said. Thank you for your time, Elon. He stood, offering a warm handshake. Take all the time you need, Clara. We'll be ready when you are. As Clara stepped out of the building, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Andrew. Clara, we just wanted to let you know that we've been in touch with Emma's future mentor. We've set up an informal meeting for next week. Let us know if you're interested. It could give you some further insight. Clara looked down at the message, her mind racing. The final decision seemed to be edging closer, but with each step, the weight of it only grew heavier. Would meeting with Emma's mentor give her the clarity she needed, or would it add yet another layer of uncertainty to an already complex decision? Clara sat in her car, staring at the phone screen, the message from Andrew still fresh in her mind. She had thought meeting with Elon would provide clarity, but now she was facing yet another unknown, Emma's mentor. What kind of person would they be? Would they share Elon's vision? Or would they challenge everything she thought she knew about Emma's future? She glanced at the clock. The meeting was set for the next day, an informal sit-down in a small cafe in the city. It seemed low pressure, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that it was a crucial piece of the puzzle. She arrived at the cafe early, wanting to take a moment to gather her thoughts. The small, quiet establishment had a warm ambience, with soft lighting and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. It was the kind of place where people came to think, to reflect, to escape. Clara found a seat by the window, watching the world outside go by. Her mind kept wandering back to Emma, the little girl who had already overcome so much. Emma's brilliance had never been in question, but Clara couldn't help but worry about the path she was about to embark on. Would this decision steal her childhood? Would Emma regret being thrust into the limelight so early? As she sipped her coffee, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Clara? She looked up to see a tall man with a calm demeanor standing at the entrance. He had dark hair, a well-groomed beard, and a presence that was immediately reassuring. His eyes were sharp, but there was something approachable about him, a warmth that made Clara feel at ease. Hello, she said, standing up to greet him. You must be Emma's mentor. The man smiled and extended his hand. I'm Alex Carter. It's a pleasure to meet you. They shook hands, and Clara could feel a strange sense of relief wash over her. Something about Alex's calmness made her feel like this meeting could finally provide the answers she'd been searching for. Please sit, Clara said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I'm glad we could meet. Alex sat down, his posture relaxed. Thank you for taking the time. I know how important this decision is, and I want to make sure you have all the information you need. Clara nodded, still unsure how to begin. She had so many questions, but she didn't want to overwhelm him. Instead, she decided to start with what had been weighing on her most. Andrew mentioned that you'd be helping Emma. Can you tell me more about your approach? How do you work with children like her? Alex took a moment before answering, choosing his words carefully. It's important to understand that I'm not here to push Emma into a mold or a path she isn't ready for. My role is to guide her, help her explore her interests, and give her the space to grow at her own pace. Children like Emma are rare, brilliant, yes, but also deeply curious. My job is to nurture that curiosity, not suppress it. Clara listened intently. His words resonated with her. This wasn't about making Emma conform to a predefined set of expectations. It was about giving her the tools to grow and the freedom to choose her own direction. That's exactly what I want for her, Clara said softly. I don't want her to feel like she has to be perfect or fit into a box. She's already so much more than what people expect. Alex nodded. I agree completely. Perfection isn't the goal. What we're aiming for is growth. If Emma wants to explore technology, math, or something else entirely, my job is to give her the resources to do that. But it's also about balance. She needs to learn about failure, about the setbacks that come with success. It's all part of the journey. Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was the reassurance she needed. She had been so afraid that the program, or even the mentorship, would push Emma too hard, that it would be a relentless pursuit of success without room for mistakes. But this felt right. I'm glad to hear that, Clara said, her voice steady. I've been worried about the pressure. Emma's still so young. I don't want her to lose herself in all of this. Alex leaned forward slightly, his expression sincere. I understand your concern, Clara, and it's valid. But I think the most important thing to remember is that Emma's journey will be her own. We're not forcing her into anything. She has the freedom to explore, to learn, and to decide what she wants from this. The pressure comes when we try to force someone into a future they're not ready for. We won't do that to her. Clara felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. It was rare that she encountered someone who understood her fears so clearly. She had always wanted the best for Emma, but the pressure to succeed had always been a concern, especially now that so much attention was on her. I just want her to be happy, Clara whispered. Alex's voice softened. She will be. The happiest people are the ones who are free to follow their own paths, and we'll make sure she has the freedom to do just that. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For the first time, she felt like she could truly trust the people involved in Emma's future. Thank you, Clara said, her voice filled with gratitude. This means more than you know. They talked for a while longer, going over the details of the mentorship and what Emma could expect in the coming months. Clara felt a growing sense of peace as she listened to Alex, knowing that the decision was finally within reach. As the meeting came to an end, Alex stood up and extended his hand once more. It's been great talking with you, Clara. I think Emma is in great hands. When you're ready, we'll be here. Clara stood as well, shaking his hand. I think I'm ready. As Clara stepped out of the cafe and into the crisp afternoon air, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Emma's teacher. Clara, just wanted to let you know that Emma has made some exciting progress in her studies this week. We're seeing a big shift in her learning. I think it's time to start thinking about her next steps. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Was this the sign she had been waiting for? Was Emma ready to take the next step, to fully embrace this new chapter of her life? The decision seemed more urgent than ever, and yet Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment where everything would change. Clara's hand trembled as she held her phone, reading the message from Emma's teacher again. Exciting progress, she thought, a twinge of both pride and fear settling in her chest. Emma had always been gifted, but the idea of her making a big shift was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Clara felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just about Emma's future anymore. It was about choosing the right path, a path that could shape the rest of her life. The next morning, Clara found herself sitting at her kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring at the calendar. Emma's meeting with Alex, her new mentor, was scheduled for the following week. But today, there was something important she needed to consider. Was Emma truly ready to step into this world? Her thoughts kept drifting back to the first time she had realized Emma's potential. At just 5 years old, Emma had been able to solve complex puzzles, ask questions that even the most experienced adults had trouble answering, and display an uncanny grasp of things that were far beyond her years. But Emma was still a child, and Clara wanted to protect her innocence, to let her have the carefree moments every child deserved. She had never wanted Emma to feel burdened by expectations. But now, it seemed the world was waiting for her to make a choice. Clara knew Emma's genius couldn't be ignored, and the opportunities she had ahead were too significant to turn away. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Andrew. "Clara, have you had a chance to think about Emma's future? I believe this is her time. The world is ready for her." Clara paused, staring at the screen. Andrew had always been a staunch advocate for pushing boundaries. He had been instrumental in connecting Emma with some of the brightest minds in the world. But Clara wasn't so sure. She needed to know that Emma would be protected, that her growth would happen at her own pace, not at the expense of her childhood. Just as she was about to respond, her doorbell rang. She stood up, startled, and walked toward the door. Standing there was a familiar face. Alex, Emma's mentor. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said with a smile. "I figured it might be helpful to talk before the official meeting next week, if you're open to it." Clara blinked, surprised but also intrigued. "Of course. Come in." Alex entered the living room and took a seat, his calm demeanor immediately putting Clara at ease. "I wanted to give you some time to think things over, but I also wanted to check in. It's clear to me that you're invested in Emma's well-being, and I admire that. I understand this decision isn't easy. It's a lot of pressure." Clara sat across from him, taking a deep breath. "It is. I know Emma is extraordinary, but I'm afraid of pushing her too hard. I don't want her to lose herself in all of this. I want her to grow, but I also want her to be a child. I don't want to force her into something she's not ready for." Alex nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's a valid concern, Clara, and it's something we take very seriously. Our goal isn't to push Emma too fast, but to create a space where she can grow naturally. Some children are ready for this kind of opportunity earlier than others, but we're not here to force it. We're here to guide her, to give her the tools she needs to shape her own future." Clara leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly together. "But how do I know when she's ready? How do I know I'm not just pushing her into something she doesn't want?" Alex smiled gently. "It's a process, Clara. We won't rush her. We'll check in with her often, gauge how she's feeling, and make sure she's enjoying what she's doing. She's not going to be thrown into a whirlwind without support. And if at any point she feels overwhelmed or unsure, we'll take a step back." Clara felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time, she felt like someone truly understood her fears. This wasn't just about Emma's intellect. It was about her happiness, her sense of self. "I appreciate that, Alex," Clara said softly. "I want to trust that you'll take care of her, but I also need to know that she won't lose her sense of wonder in the process. That's what matters most to me." Alex's voice softened, but there was a firmness to his words. "Clara, Emma is a remarkable young girl, but just like any other child, she has her own dreams, her own desires. We'll make sure she gets to explore those. I believe in her, but I believe in her as a person first. her mind, her heart, her spirit. And I promise, we'll protect that. Clara felt a knot loosen in her chest. This was the reassurance she had needed. Alex wasn't just another mentor trying to exploit Emma's abilities for his own gain. He was someone who saw the bigger picture, the importance of Emma's emotional and mental well-being. Just then, the door creaked open. Emma stepped into the room, her face lighting up when she saw Alex. "Mr. Carter." Alex stood and smiled at her. "Hello, Emma. I'm glad you're here." Emma ran to him, and Clara's heart swelled with a mix of pride and relief. Emma was still her little girl, despite everything. "I've been practicing my puzzles," Emma said eagerly, her eyes sparkling. "I think I've figured out the one with the triangles and circles." Clara couldn't help but laugh. "You're always working on something, aren't you?" Emma beamed, clearly proud of herself. Alex knelt down beside her. "That's wonderful, Emma. Keep practicing. And remember, it's okay to take breaks too. Your brain needs rest just like the rest of you." Emma nodded solemnly, as if she had just received the wisest piece of advice. Clara watched the exchange, feeling more confident than ever that this mentorship was the right choice for Emma. As the day went on, Clara reflected on everything Alex had said. She had been so worried about making the wrong decision, but in the quiet moments with Emma, she realized that maybe the right decision wasn't about choosing the perfect path. It was about giving Emma the freedom to choose her own. Later that evening, after Alex had left, Clara received an unexpected call. It was from Elon Musk. "Clara," his voice echoed in her ear, calm but urgent. "I need to speak with you about Emma. It's time we had a serious conversation about her future." Clara's heart raced. Was this the moment she had been waiting for? Clara's fingers tightened around the phone as she listened to Elon Musk's voice on the other end. His words, simple yet commanding, felt surreal. She had never expected her journey with Emma to lead her here, into a conversation with one of the most influential minds in the world. "Elon Musk," Clara whispered to herself, almost in disbelief. What could this be about? His voice was steady, yet there was an undeniable urgency in his tone. "Clara, I've been following Emma's progress, and I'm impressed by what she's been able to accomplish so far. But I need to talk to you about something crucial. I believe she's ready for the next big step, and I think you and I need to have a serious discussion about what that means for her." Clara's heart raced. She had always admired Elon Musk, his innovative spirit, his bold moves in the tech world. But the thought of him reaching out about Emma was overwhelming. Could Emma really be ready for something bigger? I don't know if I'm ready for this," Clara admitted, her voice trembling. "I've been working with her so carefully, trying to protect her, to make sure she doesn't lose herself in the process. How do you know she's ready for whatever it is you're suggesting?" There was a pause on the other end. Elon's voice softened, and for a moment, Clara heard something almost reassuring in it. "I understand your concerns. I have my own children, Clara. I know what it's like to want the best for them, to protect them from the pressures that come with being extraordinary. But sometimes, the best thing we can do is let them take that leap. I believe Emma has the potential to change the world, and I think she's ready to be part of something bigger than herself." Clara's mind raced. The words echoed in her mind. Change the world. She wanted to protect Emma, but she also wanted her to soar. Could this be the opportunity of a lifetime? "Elon," Clara said, swallowing hard, "I appreciate your belief in her, but I need more than just words. I need to know that you're committed to guiding her, to making sure she doesn't lose her childhood in the process. I need to know she's not just another prodigy you're trying to mold." There was a long silence, and for a brief moment, Clara feared she had said too much, that she had offended him. But then, Elon's voice came through again, steady and calm. "Clara, I understand. I'm not in this to exploit her. I'm in this to help her grow into the person she's meant to be, on her own terms. I'm offering her an opportunity to work with the brightest minds in the world, to explore her full potential. But the decision is yours, of course. You're her mother. You have the final say." Clara's mind swirled with a mix of emotions, excitement, fear, and doubt. This was the opportunity Emma had always dreamed of, but could she handle it? Could Clara? After a long moment of silence, Clara finally spoke. "I'll need time to think about this. I want to make sure we're doing the right thing for Emma, that she's ready, that she has the support she needs." Elon's voice was understanding. "Of course, Clara. Take all the time you need. But just know that the door is open for Emma whenever she's ready. I believe she can do amazing things." As the call ended, Clara sat in the quiet of her living room, her thoughts racing. She had always known that Emma was destined for greatness, but this was bigger than she had ever imagined. She glanced over at Emma, who was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes focused on a puzzle, her brow furrowed in concentration. Clara felt a surge of love for her daughter. Emma had come so far, and now the world was waiting for her to take the next step. But what was the right step? Clara couldn't shake the fear that if they rushed into this, if they didn't take every possible precaution, Emma might lose herself in the process. She was still a little girl, after all. Just as Clara was about to call Andrew and share the news, Emma looked up from her puzzle and asked, "Mom, do you think I'm ready for something bigger? Something important?" Clara froze. How did Emma know? What was going on in her mind? Clara's voice faltered, unsure of how to answer. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Emma paused, her eyes locking onto Clara's. "I don't know. I just feel like I'm meant for something more. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I think I'm ready." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? Was Emma already preparing herself for the world she had only just begun to understand? Clara stood frozen in place, her breath catching in her throat. The words Emma had just spoken hung in the air like a heavy fog, and Clara couldn't tell whether her daughter's sudden maturity was a blessing or a burden. "I think I'm ready," Emma repeated, her voice calm and sure. Her little fingers lightly traced the edges of the puzzle in front of her, but her eyes were locked on Clara's. There was a clarity in those eyes, something beyond her 5 years. Clara sat down slowly, feeling a rush of emotions flood over her. She had always known Emma was different, that her daughter possessed a unique brilliance. But to hear her say that she was ready for something bigger, something beyond what any 5-year-old should contemplate, was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "What do you mean by ready, sweetheart?" Clara asked softly, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Emma glanced down at the puzzle, her small hands working quickly. "I don't know, Mom. It's like, I just feel it. Like there's something more out there for me. I want to help people, change things, make the world better." Her voice was serious, the words more profound than Clara had expected from a child so young. Clara's mind whirled. Could Emma really understand what she was saying? Was she truly ready to step into this world that was so far beyond her age? The world that people like Elon Musk and the brightest minds in science and technology inhabited? She swallowed hard. "Emma, what do you think that looks like? What do you want to do?" Emma paused, her brows furrowed as if she were searching for the right words. "I want to solve problems. I want to fix things that are broken, but I don't want to do it alone. I want to be with people who believe in making the world a better place." Clara felt a lump in her throat. This wasn't just about solving puzzles anymore. This was about her daughter stepping into a world where the stakes were higher, where the expectations were greater, and where the pressures could break even the strongest minds. "Sweetheart, I want to protect you," Clara said, her voice shaky. "You're my little girl. I've worked so hard to keep you safe, to make sure you don't lose your joy. But this is something so much bigger. Are you sure this is what you want?" Emma met her gaze, her expression unwavering. "I'm sure, Mom. I want to make a difference. I think I'm ready to start." Clara's heart swelled with pride, but at the same time, she was filled with doubt. Was this really Emma's choice? Or was it the pressure of the world around her pushing her into something she wasn't truly prepared for? Just then, the phone buzzed on the table. Clara glanced down. It was a message from Andrew. "Clara, I spoke to Elon. He's excited about Emma, but there's a catch. He wants her to meet with a team of experts, some of the best in the world. They want to test her abilities. They believe she can make a huge impact." Clara's hands shook as she read the message. The door that had opened for Emma was no longer a distant possibility. It was a reality. "Mom," Emma's voice broke through her thoughts. "What did they say? Do you think I can do it?" Clara looked at her daughter, and for the first time, she realized that the decision wasn't just hers to make. Emma had already decided. I think you can do anything you set your mind to, Clara said softly, her voice thick with emotion. But in that moment, Clara couldn't help but wonder if she was letting go too soon, if she was pushing Emma into a world she wasn't ready for. She had always tried to keep her daughter safe, to shield her from the harsh realities of life. But now, Emma was asking to be part of it. The next morning, Clara stood in front of the door to a large building, an Institute of Innovation and Technology, the place where Emma would meet some of the brightest minds in the world. It was the place Elon had suggested, the place where Emma's future would be decided. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. Was she making the right decision? As she turned to look at Emma, standing beside her with a calm yet determined expression, she knew there was no turning back. Emma squeezed Clara's hand. I'm ready, Mom. Let's go. Clara took a deep breath and nodded. Together, they walked toward the door. What awaited them inside could change everything, for both of them. Clara's hand shook as she reached for the door, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her shoulders. She had been Emma's protector, her shield, for so long, but now she was letting her daughter step into a world that Clara herself had only ever glimpsed from the outside. Inside, the building was vast, a modern marvel of glass and steel. The walls were lined with interactive displays, showcasing innovations that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The air hummed with the energy of possibility, and Clara could feel her heart race as they moved deeper into the heart of this world. Emma, however, walked with a calm certainty, her eyes wide with wonder, yet focused. Clara had always known that Emma was special, but the way she carried herself now, poised and confident, made Clara realize how much her daughter had changed in such a short time. As they reached the reception desk, a young woman in a crisp suit greeted them with a smile. Welcome to the Innovation Institute. You must be Emma, she said, her voice warm but businesslike. Mr. Musk is expecting you. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Elon Musk is expecting us? She couldn't help but feel both nervous and proud. Her daughter, who had started out on the streets, was now standing in a place where her ideas and her brilliance could truly make a difference. But the thought of what was to come was still overwhelming. Thank you, Clara managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The receptionist led them down a hallway lined with glass offices, each one occupied by people who seemed to be engaged in deep conversation or intense focus. Clara couldn't help but marvel at the level of intellect in this building. When they reached a large, open space at the end of the hallway, Emma turned to Clara, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Mom, do you think I can do it? Do you think they'll see how much I can help? Clara paused, kneeling down to meet her daughter's gaze. I believe in you, Emma. You're more than capable. But remember, it's okay to take your time. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just need to be yourself. Emma smiled, her little face filled with determination. I just want to help. I want to make things better. Before Clara could respond, the door to the large space opened, and a man stepped forward. It was Elon Musk. His presence was commanding, yet there was a kindness in his eyes. He didn't look like the billionaire innovator the world knew. Instead, he appeared approachable, as if he truly cared about what was about to unfold. Elon, Clara said, extending a hand. Thank you for meeting with us. Elon's fine, he said with a smile, shaking her hand warmly. I'm just glad you could make it. Emma, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Emma stepped forward, her small hand extending confidently to shake his. Nice to meet you, Mr. Musk, she said politely, her tone surprisingly mature for someone so young. Please, call me Elon, he corrected gently, his smile widening. I'm excited to see what you've got. We've set up a few exercises to get a sense of where you're at. Don't worry, this is just for us to understand how we can help you grow. Clara's heart fluttered. This wasn't just a test. It was a chance for Emma to show what she could do, a chance to step into the world she had always dreamed of. But with each word that Elon spoke, Clara's anxiety grew. Was this really the right path for Emma? They followed Elon into the main testing area, a space designed with state-of-the-art technology. Large screens lined the walls, displaying mathematical equations, engineering challenges, and complex puzzles. In the center of the room, A table was set with various objects, a model of a rocket, a few robotics kits, and a set of large-scale puzzles. Elon, what's this? Clara asked, trying to mask her nerves. This, Elon began, is just a small introduction. We want to see how Emma thinks, how she processes information, and how she tackles problems. We'll start simple, but it'll get more challenging as we go. Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. I love puzzles, she exclaimed. Where do I start? Elon chuckled softly. Let's start with something basic. You see that puzzle on the table? He pointed to a complex mechanical model of gears and levers. I want you to solve it. Take your time. There's no rush. Clara watched as Emma eagerly approached the table, her small hands already moving with precision. Her focus was intense, and it was clear that she wasn't just solving a puzzle. She was thinking about the mechanics, the problem-solving process, the logic behind it all. As Emma worked, Clara felt a sense of awe wash over her. This wasn't just a little girl playing with toys. This was a young mind at work, a mind that saw the world through a lens that most adults couldn't even begin to understand. Emma was on a different level. Elon, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Is this real? Is she really ready for this? Elon's gaze never left Emma, who was now solving the puzzle with ease, her fingers moving quickly but carefully. You'd be amazed at what a child like Emma can do when given the right environment. She's not just ready, she's already ahead of many adults. The question is whether we can provide her with the right opportunities to grow and harness that potential. Clara nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. This wasn't just about protecting Emma anymore. It was about allowing her to become the person she was destined to be. As Emma solved the last piece of the puzzle with a triumphant smile, the room fell silent. Elon turned to Clara, his expression serious. Clara, Emma's potential is extraordinary. But we're not just offering her a chance to be part of something. We're offering her the opportunity to change the future. Are you ready for that? Clara's breath caught in her throat. Was she truly ready for this? Could she let go of the fears and doubts that had held her back all these years? The answer seemed to lie in the choice she would make next. Clara? Elon's voice broke through her thoughts. Are you ready to make that decision? The room seemed to close in around Clara as Elon's question hung in the air. Was she truly ready to make that decision? To let Emma take this monumental step into a future that was as uncertain as it was exhilarating? Emma, oblivious to the weight of the moment, looked up at her with a wide, expectant smile. She had just completed the puzzle, and now she was waiting for Clara's approval, her eyes gleaming with the same excitement that had driven her from the very beginning. Clara's mind raced. She had always known that Emma was special. There had never been a doubt about that. But now, standing in front of Elon Musk, in a world that seemed so vast and full of possibilities, Clara couldn't help but wonder if this was too much too soon. Clara? Elon's voice was patient, but there was a hint of urgency. What do you think? This isn't just a test for Emma. This is a turning point. Are you ready to let her take this next step? Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the eyes of the experts in the room on her, silently waiting for her decision. Every part of her wanted to protect Emma, to keep her safe from the pressures and challenges of a world that could break even the strongest souls. But another part of her, an even stronger part, knew that Emma was no ordinary child. Emma was capable of more than she could even understand. She turned to her daughter, whose face was filled with anticipation. In that moment, Clara saw the girl she had fought so hard to protect. The same girl who had overcome so much already, the girl who had faced the harshest parts of life and yet still held onto her brilliance and joy. I think you're ready, Emma, Clara said softly, her voice shaking. But it's not going to be easy. There will be challenges, and there will be times when you want to give up. Are you sure this is what you want? Emma nodded enthusiastically, her small hands gripping Clara's. I'm sure, Mom. I want to help people. I want to make things better. I know I can do this. Clara swallowed hard, feeling a lump in her throat. Was this truly the best decision? Was she ready to let Emma step into this world, knowing that it would change everything? Elon, if I agree to this, if I let her do this, Clara's voice trailed off, unsure of what she was asking. She felt both terrified and exhilarated at the thought of her daughter stepping into a future so big, so unknown. What happens next? Elon smiled, his expression softening as he placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. What happens next is that Emma gets the chance to realize her potential. We'll support her every step of the way, but we need her to have the space to grow, to learn, and to challenge herself. We're not offering her a shortcut, Clara. We're offering her a chance to make a real impact. Clara turned back to Emma, her heart heavy but full of hope. This wasn't just about success or fame. It was about allowing Emma to use her extraordinary mind to change the world, to make a difference, not just for herself, but for everyone. Okay, Clara said finally, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Let's do this. Let's give you the chance to change the world. Elon's eyes brightened, and he gave a small nod. You've made the right choice. Emma, welcome to the next chapter of your journey. We'll be with you every step of the way. Emma beamed, her eyes shining with excitement and determination. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I won't let you down. As the words left her mouth, Clara realized just how much had changed in such a short time. Her daughter was no longer the scared, homeless child who had hidden from the world. She was now a young genius, ready to take on the challenges of a future that could shape not just her own life, but the lives of millions. As Elon led them out of the testing room and toward a new, quieter space where they would discuss Emma's future in more detail, Clara's mind was racing. What had they just agreed to? Was she ready to step aside and let Emma truly step into this new world? Before she could voice her concerns, Emma tugged at her sleeve. Mom, I just want to say thank you. You've always been there for me, and now I get to help everyone. I promise I'll make you proud. Clara squeezed her daughter's hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. This was it. There was no going back now. Emma's journey had just begun, and Clara was about to learn what it truly meant to let go. But as they stepped into the next room, something unexpected happened. Elon paused and turned to Clara with a serious look on his face. We've got something to discuss, he said, his voice low. Something big. It involves Emma, and it could change everything again. Clara's heart skipped a beat. What could be bigger than this? Was this truly just the beginning? Clara's mind buzzed as they followed Elon down the long, pristine hallway. The air felt thick with anticipation, and her thoughts spun with questions she couldn't quite put into words. What could possibly be bigger than the decision they had just made? What was Elon about to tell them that would make this moment feel even more monumental? They entered a sleek conference room, its walls lined with screens displaying complex algorithms and cutting-edge technology. Emma took a seat at the table, still beaming with excitement, while Clara stood beside her, her hands trembling slightly. Elon stood at the head of the table, his gaze fixed on both of them as if preparing to share something that would alter the course of their lives forever. Clara, Elon began, his voice serious yet reassuring. We've been keeping a very close eye on Emma's potential, and I have to tell you, what we've seen so far is only the beginning. You see, Emma isn't just a child prodigy. She has abilities that are, well, unprecedented. Clara's heart skipped a beat. Unprecedented? She had always known Emma was special, but hearing Elon Musk, someone who had seen the best of the best, describe her like this was almost too much to absorb. What do you mean? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What abilities? I don't understand. Elon turned to one of the screens, where a set of data points and images flickered to life. We've done some preliminary scans and assessments of Emma's brain activity. What we've discovered is that her cognitive abilities, particularly in problem-solving and spatial reasoning, are beyond anything we've encountered in our research. Her mind operates on a level that most adults can't even begin to comprehend. Clara felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. But she's just a child. She's 5 years old. How is this possible? Elon took a step closer to her, his expression unshaken. There's a possibility, Clara, that Emma's brain is functioning in a way that's fundamentally different from others. It's as though her neural pathways are wired to process information in real time, allowing her to solve problems and understand concepts with an ease that's, quite frankly, impossible for most people. Clara's thoughts spiraled. Could it be? Could Emma's intelligence really be so far beyond anything the world had ever seen? She looked at her daughter, whose eyes were wide with curiosity, but whose face still held that same unwavering confidence. Is she the only one? Clara asked, a fear creeping into her voice. Is there anyone else like her? Elon paused, his gaze shifting to the screens behind him. No, he said slowly. At least, not to this extent. We've seen gifted children, brilliant minds, but Emma is something entirely different. It's like she's operating on a whole new level. Clara swallowed hard, her mind reeling with the weight of Elon's words. She had always known that Emma was extraordinary, but hearing it from Elon, with his experience and understanding of the cutting edge of technology, made it all feel so surreal. What does this mean for her? For us? Emma, sensing the tension in the room, looked up at Clara with those familiar, wide eyes. Mom, what's wrong? I thought I did something good. Clara's heart clenched. She's only 5, Clara reminded herself. She doesn't understand the enormity of this. She knelt down beside Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. You did something amazing, sweetheart. You've done something that could change the world. Emma smiled, her trust in Clara evident. I just want to help. Elon watched the exchange quietly, his expression softening. He understood the weight of what he was saying. Clara, there's more. We've been thinking about the future, about Emma's future, and there's an opportunity one want to offer her. An opportunity that could accelerate her development, give her access to resources that could take her abilities to places we can't even imagine. Clara's breath hitched. What kind of opportunity? Elon's gaze sharpened. We've been in talks with several major tech organizations and research labs. They're eager to collaborate with Emma, to help her refine her abilities, to give her access to tools that could help her grow at an unprecedented rate. But it won't be easy, and it won't be without challenges. She'll be pushed to her limits, and it could be dangerous. Clara's stomach twisted in knots. Dangerous? She repeated, her voice thick with concern. What do you mean, dangerous? Elon's eyes softened slightly, but his tone remained serious. The kinds of experiments we're talking about, the level of brain stimulation and mental challenges, it's not for everyone. It could be taxing on her body and mind. But if we do this right, if we give her the right guidance, she could unlock potential that would change the very fabric of human understanding. Clara turned to Emma, her mind racing. She had spent so long protecting her, keeping her safe from the dangers of the world. And now, she was being asked to expose Emma to risks that, as a mother, Clara could hardly fathom. Emma looked at Clara, her gaze unwavering. Mom, I want to do this. I want to help people. I want to change things. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had spent so many years trying to shield Emma from the world. But this was no longer about protecting her. It was about giving her the chance to change the world, to do something that no one else could. Elon, Clara said finally, her voice steady. What's the next step? Elon's expression grew more serious. The next step is a commitment. We need to know that you're both ready for this. We can't afford to waste time, and the window of opportunity is closing. Emma's abilities won't wait for us to make up our minds. Are you ready to take that step? Clara felt her heart race. This wasn't just a decision for her. It was a decision for Emma, for their future, for the future of the world. But before she could answer, a sudden, unexpected sound echoed through the room. A sharp beeping noise from one of the screens. Elon's face darkened as he turned toward it. The numbers flashing on the screen were growing faster, more erratic. Wait, Elon muttered, his voice tense. This isn't supposed to happen. As the beeping intensified, the lights in the room flickered. Clara's heart raced as Elon's face twisted in confusion and concern. Elon, what's going on? Clara asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Elon replied, his eyes narrowing at the screen. Something's happening with Emma's data. This is beyond anything I've seen. Clara's eyes shifted to Emma, who sat there calmly, as if unaware of the storm brewing around them. But Clara could sense it. Something was changing, something she hadn't anticipated. And as the beeping grew louder, a chilling thought crossed Clara's mind. What if Emma's extraordinary mind was about to reveal something that no one, not even Elon Musk, was prepared for? The beeping on the screen grew louder, more urgent. Elon's face shifted from confusion to a hint of alarm, his fingers flying over the console in front of him, typing quickly as if trying to make sense of the data that was rapidly spiraling out of control. Clara's stomach clenched as the lights flickered again. What was happening? Her gaze darted between Elon and the monitor, trying to grasp the magnitude of the situation. Elon, what's going on? Clara asked again, her voice rising with anxiety. This shouldn't be happening, Elon muttered, more to himself than to Clara. His eyes were fixed on the screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. I've never seen data like this before. It's off the charts. Emma, still sitting at the table, looked up at her mother, her expression calm despite the growing tension in the room. Clara could feel the unease radiating from everyone, but Emma seemed unaffected, as if the chaos around her were just another passing moment. It was eerie, almost as if she had already seen this all before. Elon, Clara pressed, her heart racing. What does this mean for Emma? Elon turned to her, his face serious now. It means that whatever is happening inside Emma's brain is unlike anything we've encountered. We thought we were dealing with a highly gifted child, someone whose intellect was already beyond her years. But this is something else entirely. Clara's mind raced. Something else? What does that mean? Elon, Clara said, her voice tight. Is Emma okay? Is she in danger? Elon paused, his hand still hovering over the screen. For a moment, he didn't say anything, and Clara's heart skipped a beat. The uncertainty in the air was suffocating. Then, with a deep breath, Elon spoke, his voice quieter but no less intense. I don't know. We need to run more tests. But something in her neural patterns is accelerating at a rate that defies what we understand about the human brain. This could be a breakthrough, something revolutionary, or it could be a sign of something dangerous. We don't have enough data yet to be sure. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Dangerous? She had always known Emma was extraordinary, but the thought of something potentially harmful coming from her daughter's gifts was unbearable. She had already sacrificed so much to keep Emma safe. Was she really ready to risk it all? Emma, sensing her mother's rising anxiety, reached out and gently took Clara's hand. Mom, I'm okay. I promise. I just want to help. You taught me that, right? Clara's heart broke at her daughter's words. Emma had always been so sure of herself, so certain of her mission in life. But now, Clara wasn't so sure. What if pushing Emma too hard, exposing her to this new world of advanced technology and research, would be too much for her to handle? Elon, Clara said, trying to steady her voice, what happens if this is dangerous? What if this isn't just about her brain being advanced? What if it's too much for her to bear? Elon didn't respond immediately, instead turning back to the screen as he continued to analyze the data. The beeping had slowed, but the numbers on the display were still growing at an unnatural pace. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Elon straightened up and looked at Clara with a mixture of awe and concern. This isn't just about her intellect, Elon said, his voice low. There's something happening here that we haven't even begun to understand. The patterns we're seeing in Emma's brain aren't just an acceleration of cognitive abilities. There's something else. Something unpredictable. Clara's stomach twisted into knots. Unpredictable? That didn't sound like something they could control. Are you saying Emma's brain is changing? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at Emma, who was still sitting quietly, completely unaware of the magnitude of the conversation unfolding around her. She was just a little girl with a big dream. And yet, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the world they were about to step into was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Elon, I need to know, Clara said, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing at her. What do we do now? What's the next step? Elon looked at her with a conflicted expression, clearly torn between excitement and caution. We need to give her a choice, Clara. If we continue down this path, there's no going back. We're dealing with something that could redefine what we know about the human mind. Emma's gift, whatever it is, could lead to unimaginable breakthroughs, or it could unravel everything we understand about the brain. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process Elon's words. This was no longer just about helping Emma reach her full potential. This was a risk, one that could change the course of history, but also one that could hurt Emma, maybe even break her. Elon, Clara said slowly, her voice shaking, I need to know if this is something Emma can control. Can we stop if it becomes too much for her? Elon paused, his gaze flickering toward Emma once more. If it becomes too much for her, we'll stop, but we don't know yet if it will. The data we have is too incomplete. We need more time. And, if I'm being honest, we need Emma to make that decision herself. Clara turned to her daughter, her heart aching. Emma's smile had faded slightly, her brows furrowing in concern as she took in the serious tone of the conversation. Emma, Clara said softly, kneeling down to her daughter's level, there's something we need to talk about. We've just learned that your brain is doing things that no one has ever seen before. And it's exciting, but it's also a little scary. You need to understand that this path we're on isn't just about fun puzzles and solving problems. It's bigger than that. It could change everything. Emma nodded seriously, her expression unwavering. I know, Mom. I've always known I was different. I just want to do good. I want to help people. Clara's heart shattered at her daughter's courage. Emma wasn't afraid. She was ready for whatever came next. But Clara? Clara wasn't so sure. As the room fell silent, Clara stood, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Could she truly let Emma walk this path? Was she ready to risk everything for a chance at something extraordinary? Before she could decide, Elon's phone rang. His expression shifted to one of urgency. He glanced at Clara and then back at Emma, his voice tense. I need to take this. We're about to learn something that will change everything. Clara's heart raced. What could be more urgent than this? Was this the turning point? Could Emma's mind be on the verge of something even more unimaginable? The ringing phone seemed to echo through the silent room, amplifying the tension in the air. Clara watched Elon as he quickly picked up, his face tight with concentration. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in around her, and every second that passed felt like an eternity. Elon looked at her with a conflicted expression, clearly torn between excitement and caution. We need to give her a choice, Clara. If we continue down this path, there's no going back. We're dealing with something that could redefine what we know about the human mind. Emma's gift, whatever it is, could lead to unimaginable breakthroughs, or it could unravel everything we understand about the brain. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process Elon's words. This was no longer just about helping Emma reach her full potential. This was a risk, one that could change the course of history, but also one that could hurt Emma, maybe even break her. Elon, Clara said slowly, her voice shaking, I need to know if this is something Emma can control. Can we stop if it becomes too much for her? Elon paused, his gaze flickering toward Emma once more. If it becomes too much for her, we'll stop, but we don't know yet if it will. The data we have is too incomplete. We need more time. And, if I'm being honest, we need Emma to make that decision herself. Clara turned to her daughter, her heart aching. Emma's smile had faded slightly, her brows furrowing in concern as she took in the serious tone of the conversation. Emma, Clara said softly, kneeling down to her daughter's level, there's something we need to talk about. We've just learned that your brain is doing things that no one has ever seen before. And it's exciting, but it's also a little scary. You need to understand that this path we're on isn't just about fun puzzles and solving problems. It's bigger than that. It could change everything. Emma nodded seriously, her expression unwavering. I know, Mom. I've always known I was different. I just want to do good. I want to help people. Clara's heart shattered at her daughter's courage. Emma wasn't afraid. She was ready for whatever came next. But Clara? Clara wasn't so sure. As the room fell silent, Clara stood, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Could she truly let Emma walk this path? Was she ready to risk everything for a chance at something extraordinary? Before she could decide, Elon's phone rang. His expression shifted to one of urgency. He glanced at Clara and then back at Emma, his voice tense. I need to take this. We're about to learn something that will change everything. Clara's heart raced. What could be more urgent than this? Was this the turning point? Could Emma's mind be on the verge of something even more unimaginable? The ringing phone seemed to echo through the silent room, amplifying the tension in the air. Clara watched Elon as he quickly picked up, his face tight with concentration. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in around her, and every second that passed felt like an eternity. Hello? Elon's voice was steady, but Clara could hear the underlying urgency. His eyes darted from the screen back to Emma, who was sitting quietly, waiting for answers. But what answers could they give her now? Clara wasn't sure if she could even keep up with the whirlwind of information. Elon, it's Sarah, came the voice on the other end. It was sharp, direct, and filled with a sense of something important, something dire. We've just had a breakthrough, but you need to see this for yourself. The data we've been analyzing, it's linked to Emma's neural patterns. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Clara's pulse quickened. Emma's gift, whatever it was starting to feel more like a threat than a blessing. Could this breakthrough be a solution? Or would it push them into uncharted and dangerous territory? On my way, Elon said quickly, disconnecting the call before Clara could even ask. His gaze lingered on the screen one last time, his hands hovering over the keyboard as if contemplating what to do next. Without another word, he stood up and grabbed his coat, throwing a glance at Clara. I need to go, Clara. Sarah and I are going to analyze the next phase of the data. This is huge. It's not just Emma anymore. Wait, Clara called out, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Where are you going? What's this about? What's happening with Emma? Elon paused, his back to her, then turned. His face was grave, and Clara's heart sank. We're beyond Emma now, he said, his tone grim. The research, it's expanding. I think we're dealing with something that could change everything we know about the brain, about humanity itself. Clara's throat went dry. She tried to push back the panic rising in her chest. What had they started? I'll be back soon. I need you to stay calm. Emma's fine, for now. We just need more data. Please trust me on this. Trust you? Clara repeated, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fear. Elon, I've trusted you with Emma's life. You have to tell me what's going on. What happens if you find something dangerous? Elon hesitated, then gave her a reassuring, if forced, smile. If it's dangerous, we'll stop. But I don't think it will be. We're on the edge of something incredible, Clara. I promise you. We'll handle it carefully. And with that, he left. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Clara alone with Emma. Clara felt her chest tighten. What did Elon mean by, it's not just Emma anymore? The more she thought about it, the more it unsettled her. Had they unknowingly crossed a line? What if their experiments with Emma's brain had led them to something even more dangerous than they could imagine? Emma's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Mom, is everything okay? Clara turned to find her daughter watching her intently, her wide eyes filled with concern. There was that calmness again, that certainty Emma carried with her even in moments of chaos. It was unsettling. How could Emma remain so composed when everything around them was unraveling? I don't know, sweetheart, Clara said, trying to smile. But we're going to figure it out. I promise. Emma nodded, her expression softening as she reached out to hold Clara's hand. But Clara could feel her daughter's small fingers trembling, just slightly, as they squeezed her palm. Was Emma scared too? The phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence. Clara picked it up without thinking, glancing at the caller ID. It was Sarah. Clara. Sarah's voice was low, urgent. You need to prepare yourself. What we're about to tell you. It's beyond anything we anticipated. I know Elon said we're not there yet, but this isn't just about Emma anymore. It's something much bigger. Clara's heart stopped. What? The dread that had been building in her chest deepened, twisting into something sharp. She glanced over at Emma, who was now staring at her, unblinking. Sarah, Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean? What's going on? Clara, we're not just dealing with a child's extraordinary intellect, Sarah continued, her voice tense. What we're seeing in Emma's neural patterns is connected to something much bigger than we thought. We're talking about a global impact. What Emma's brain is capable of could change the entire course of human evolution. And if we don't control it, it could destroy everything. Clara froze, the blood draining from her face. She turned to Emma, her heart in her throat. What do you mean it could destroy everything? Clara asked, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. Emma's brain isn't just processing information at an accelerated rate. It's doing something else. Sarah's voice cracked with tension. It's starting to rewire itself. It's like it's integrating knowledge beyond what a human brain should be able to handle. And it's spreading faster than we ever thought possible. Clara's mind raced. How much faster? Exponentially, Sarah replied. We don't know if this is something she can control. We don't know if anyone can. Clara's legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed onto the nearest chair, her hands shaking as she tried to steady herself. What had they unleashed? And was Emma ready for what was to come? As Clara tried to process the gravity of Sarah's words, the lights in the room flickered again, and this time, Emma's eyes glowed faintly with an intensity Clara had never seen before. Mom. Emma's voice was soft but oddly steady. I think I understand it now. I think I know what I have to do. Clara's breath caught. No, Emma, you don't understand. You don't know what you're asking. Before she could speak, Emma stood up, walking toward the door as if guided by something unseen. Clara jumped to her feet, calling out, but Emma was already gone. Clara stood frozen in place, her eyes locked on the spot where Emma had been standing just moments ago. The door was ajar, the faint hum of the city outside seeping in. The eerie glow from Emma's eyes lingered in Clara's memory, burning into her mind like a haunting echo. What had just happened? It was as if her daughter had stepped into a world that Clara could no longer reach. Emma! Clara shouted, panic rising in her chest. She rushed toward the door, her heart pounding in her ears. What was Emma thinking? Where was she going? Was this the beginning of something they couldn't stop? But the hall outside was empty. No sign of her daughter. No sounds. Just silence. Clara's breath came in short, sharp bursts as she scanned the hallway, every instinct telling her to search harder, faster. Her phone buzzed again. The sharp sound broke through the tension, and Clara snatched it up, nearly dropping it in her haste. It was Sarah again. Clara. Sarah's voice was urgent, yet calm. You need to stop Emma. Right now. I'm trying, Clara gasped, her voice shaky. She's gone, Sarah. I don't know where she went. What's happening? What's wrong with her? Sarah was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy, filled with the weight of something monumental. Clara, Emma's brain isn't just processing information faster than we can understand. It's integrating knowledge on a level we can't comprehend. She's no longer just a child. She's crossing into something entirely different. Clara's throat tightened. What are you saying? What we're seeing in her neural patterns. It's like she's starting to evolve beyond human limits. This isn't just about intellect anymore. This is about something greater. If Emma doesn't learn to control it, it could trigger a global shift in consciousness. It could break everything. Clara's mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. A global shift? What does that mean? She was having trouble keeping up with the enormity of what was happening. All she knew was that Emma was in danger. No, they were all in danger. I can't lose her, Sarah, Clara whispered, the tears threatening to spill. I need to find her. You will, Sarah said, her tone soft but firm, but you have to hurry. We're not sure how much longer we have before whatever is happening to her becomes irreversible. She's already begun accessing information we never thought possible. Secrets of the universe, technology that shouldn't exist, memories and visions of things that no human has ever seen. And it's growing. Growing? Clara repeated. What does that mean? It means she's becoming something we can't fully understand. She might even know more than we do by now, Clara. It's happening faster than we can track it. Clara's chest tightened as the panic began to cloud her thoughts. What was Emma becoming? And why did Clara feel like they were on the precipice of something they couldn't control? I'll find her, Clara said, her voice trembling. I won't let anything happen to her. I'm here for you, Clara, Sarah replied. But you need to get to her before she makes any more decisions on her own. The line went dead. Clara lowered the phone, her mind a whirl of thoughts and fears. She needed to find Emma. But how? Where would she even begin? Then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed something. A flash of light, just a flicker, barely noticeable. But it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. It came from the small study off the living room, the room where Emma often spent hours buried in her books, scribbling notes and solving problems. Clara's legs moved before her mind could fully process it. She rushed toward the room, her pulse thudding in her ears, her mind filled with nothing but the need to get to Emma. As she stepped into the study, Clara's breath caught in her throat. The room was bathed in an unnatural glow, the light flickering like a strange aurora. In the center of the room, Emma stood, perfectly still, her eyes wide and unblinking, her face expressionless. The air around her seemed to vibrate, and Clara could feel the strange energy radiating off her daughter, making her skin tingle with something that felt like static electricity. "Emma," Clara said, her voice breaking, "what are you doing?" Emma didn't respond. She simply stared ahead, her eyes glowing faintly. Clara's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the daughter she knew. This wasn't the little girl who had just a few days ago needed her so desperately. "Emma, please," Clara said, stepping forward. "You have to come back to me. Whatever's happening, we can fix it. But you have to trust me." The room seemed to pulse with energy, and Clara could feel it, deep in her bones. Emma's stillness was unnerving. It was like she wasn't really there at all, like she had crossed into another world entirely. Without warning, Emma's head turned slightly, just enough to acknowledge Clara. But there was no warmth in her gaze, no recognition. There was only knowledge. Infinite, boundless knowledge. "I know what I have to do now," Emma said, her voice low and steady, as if speaking from a place far beyond her years. Clara felt her blood run cold. "What are you talking about, Emma? What are you going to do?" Emma's lips parted, and for a moment, Clara thought she saw a flicker of hesitation in her daughter's eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold determination. "I have to go," Emma said, her voice carrying an eerie finality. "The world needs me." Clara stepped forward, desperate now. "No, Emma, you don't understand. You're still my little girl. Please, don't leave me." But Emma didn't move. Instead, she simply turned her gaze back to the glowing light in front of her, her expression blank. "I'm not your little girl anymore, Mom," she said softly. "I've become something else." Clara's heart shattered as she reached out toward her daughter, but Emma's form began to blur, as if she were fading into the very light that surrounded her. Clara's scream was choked in her throat, the weight of the moment crashing down on her. And then Emma was gone. Clara collapsed to her knees, the last remnants of her daughter's presence fading into nothing. Her hands trembled as she reached out into the emptiness. Had she lost her forever? In that moment, a strange buzzing filled the air, and Clara felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. A presence, not of Emma, but something else. Something watching. Clara didn't know what to do, or who to trust anymore. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. Clara sat on the floor of the study, her eyes still locked on the place where Emma had disappeared. Her mind struggled to comprehend what had just happened. One moment, her daughter had been standing before her, her eyes glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The next, she was gone, vanished into the very energy that had overtaken her. How could this happen? Clara's heart ached, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic spiral. The only thing that kept her from completely unraveling was the strange, insistent, buzzing sound in the air. It wasn't a physical sound. It was a hum, deep within her bones, as though the very air around her was vibrating with a pulse she couldn't ignore. Clara slowly got to her feet, her legs shaking from the weight of her fear and desperation. She reached for her phone again, but before she could dial Sarah's number, her gaze was drawn to the far corner of the room. The shadows in the corner flickered, as though disturbed by something unseen. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The light in the study was dimming, as if the room itself was trying to retreat from something or someone. Her phone buzzed once again, but it wasn't Sarah this time. Clara's heart skipped a beat when she saw the name on the screen. Unknown number. With trembling hands, Clara answered the call. Clara! The voice on the other end was soft, too soft, almost a whisper. Who is this? Clara's voice shook with fear. Was this Emma? But the voice that answered was not her daughter's. It was colder, deeper, filled with an unsettling calm. You don't know me yet, the voice continued, but you will. Soon. Clara's blood ran cold. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Whoever this was, they knew things they shouldn't know, and the unease that had settled deep in her chest intensified. What do you want? Clara forced out the words, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mind raced. Is this part of what's happening to Emma? The voice didn't answer right away. Instead, there was a long, almost deliberate pause, as if the person on the other end was savoring the moment. Your daughter, the voice said, is no longer just a child. She's unlocking something the world isn't ready for. Clara's head spun. What are you talking about? She demanded. Where is Emma? What have you done with her? The voice sighed, and Clara could almost hear the smirk that accompanied it. She's beyond you now. You can't reach her, but you can stop what's coming next. If you act quickly. Stop what? Clara whispered, her throat tightening with dread. There was another pause before the voice spoke again. The world is on the brink of something. Emma isn't just changing. It's as if she's accessing something ancient, something that has been hidden from humanity for millennia. She's unlocking the truth, Clara, and it's not a truth that will be kind to the world you know. Clara's mind raced. What did that even mean? Ancient truths? Hidden knowledge? She could barely keep up with the conversation, let alone understand what the voice was implying about her daughter. Please, Clara whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. I need to find her. Tell me where she is. The voice chuckled darkly. You won't find her, Clara. She's already beyond reach. But you can still help her, if you make the right choice. What choice? Clara gasped, her mind spinning as she tried to make sense of the cryptic words. You need to stop searching for Emma, the voice said with eerie finality. You need to let go. The truth is already unfolding, and you are in the way. Clara's hands trembled as she held the phone to her ear. She could feel the walls closing in, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The truth? What truth? And why was this person telling her to stop looking for her daughter? You're not listening, the voice continued, growing more insistent. The moment you confront what Emma is becoming, everything will change. And if you aren't careful, you'll destroy everything. A sharp, metallic sound rang out from the phone as the call ended abruptly, leaving Clara in stunned silence. Her heart hammered in her chest as she stared at the screen, the call now disconnected. Who was that? And why did she feel like something far darker was about to unfold? Suddenly, the buzzing sound in the room grew louder, almost deafening. Clara's head whipped toward the source of the noise. The shadows in the corner seemed to move, undulating with an unnatural rhythm. Clara's breath caught in her throat as a figure emerged from the darkness. A tall silhouette, shrouded in a dark cloak, stepped into the dim light of the study. Clara froze, her pulse racing. She couldn't make out any distinct features, just a dark, looming presence, as if the very shadows themselves had taken form. Who are you? Clara's voice was barely a whisper, her body frozen in fear. The figure didn't answer at first. It simply stood there, its form almost blending with the shadows. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it spoke in a low, guttural voice that sent chills through Clara's spine. You're asking the wrong questions, Clara. Clara's throat tightened. What do you want with me? With Emma? The figure stepped closer, and Clara instinctively took a step back, her mind struggling to grasp what was happening. But the figure wasn't moving toward her. It was moving toward the desk. It reached out a hand, the fingers long and skeletal, and swiped the scattered papers off the surface. What is this? Clara asked, her voice cracking. The figure turned its head slowly, and Clara could feel the weight of its gaze even though she couldn't see its eyes. The figure bent over the desk, scanning the papers with an almost detached interest. "Your daughter has made the first move," the figure murmured, barely audible. "But the game is far from over." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Game? What game was it talking about? Suddenly, without warning, the figure vanished. One moment it was there, looming over the desk, and the next, it was gone, like it had never been there at all. Clara stood there, shaking, as the silence of the room returned. But something had changed. Something unseen was now watching her. And in that moment, Clara realized the truth was no longer something she could deny. The phone buzzed once more, but Clara was too afraid to answer. She already knew. Whatever had just happened, whatever was unfolding, the world she had known was gone. And there was no turning back now. Clara stood in the middle of the study, trembling, the eerie silence almost suffocating. She could feel the presence lingering in the room, an unseen force that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Her eyes darted to the phone in her hand. The screen lit up with the incoming call. It buzzed again, as if urging her to pick up, to confront whatever had just begun. Her heart pounded in her chest. Who was that figure? What did it want? She had no answers, only more questions, and the fear gnawing at her insides grew with every passing second. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, snapping Clara out of her thoughts. With a shaky breath, she answered, "Hello?" There was only silence on the other end. At first, Clara thought the call had dropped, but then she heard a faint whisper, a sound so low it was almost imperceptible. She held the phone closer to her ear. "Clara?" The voice was soft, barely a breath, but it was undeniably familiar. It was Emma. "Emma!" Clara gasped, her voice breaking. "Where are you? What's happening? Please, answer me." But instead of the reassuring voice of her daughter, the line crackled, and the whisper grew louder, more distorted, until it sounded almost like a chant, a low, rhythmic murmur that made Clara's skin crawl. "You're too late, Clara. It's already begun." Clara's blood ran cold. Her hands clenched the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. "No, please. Emma, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. The voice on the other end twisted, distorting even further. "You can't stop it. You can't save her now. She's becoming something more. The world isn't ready, but they will have no choice." The line went silent. Clara's breath hitched, her mind racing. "Emma, what are you becoming?" Her stomach twisted with dread. The ominous words, the strange presence in the room, the things she didn't understand. It was all connected. And whatever it wasn't just a threat to her daughter. It was a threat to the world. The shadows in the room seemed to flicker again, but this time, Clara didn't dare look away. Her pulse quickened, the atmosphere thick with an electric tension. Something was shifting in the air, a heavy, almost palpable force that filled the room with an unspoken dread. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Clara froze, heart racing, her senses on high alert. Who could it be? Sarah? Another figure from the shadows? Or something far worse? The door swung open slowly, revealing nothing but the empty hallway beyond. But Clara didn't move. There was something there, something she couldn't see. A presence that felt like it was right behind her, just beyond her reach. Her hand slowly reached for the door, and with a trembling push, she stepped out into the hall, eyes scanning every corner. The house felt colder now, more oppressive, as if it were alive with a dark force. As she moved down the hallway, Clara's thoughts spun. Where is Emma? Why is this happening? The answers eluded her, but one thing was clear. She couldn't face this alone. She needed help. She needed Sarah. She needed answers. But as she reached for her phone to dial, her breath caught in her throat. There, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, was a figure standing behind her. Clara spun around, her heart racing in her chest, but once again, no one was there. Just the empty hallway, stretching out into darkness. It's just my mind playing tricks, she thought, but even as the thought crossed her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, something that was far beyond her understanding. Suddenly, the buzzing from her phone grew louder, and Clara jumped, her nerves fraying. She looked down, expecting to see the unknown number once again, but this time, it was a name she recognized. Sarah. Clara quickly answered, her voice desperate. Sarah, I need you. I don't know what's happening, but it's all connected. Emma. Something's happening to her, and I can't explain it. There was a brief pause on the other end, before Sarah's voice came through, tight with worry. Clara, calm down. What are you talking about? Where's Emma? Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing as she tried to explain. She's gone, Sarah. Something's happening to her. She's changing. I don't know how to stop it. There was a figure in the study, and then this phone call, and I don't know what's real anymore. Sarah's voice became firm, an edge of urgency creeping into it. Clara, listen to me. You need to stop. Don't let this consume you. You're not thinking clearly. No, Sarah, I'm not imagining this. Clara's voice cracked. Something is happening to Emma, and I can't do this alone. I need you. Please, you're the only one who might understand. For a moment, there was silence on the line. Then, Sarah spoke, her voice soft but resolute. Okay, I'll be there. Stay where you are. But Clara, you need to stay calm. Don't let this take control of you. Clara nodded, though Sarah couldn't see it. She felt a small flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the sinking feeling in her chest. The air in the house felt thick, charged, and Clara could almost hear the pulse of something ancient, something that had been waiting. Clara felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise as she turned around. The shadows in the hallway had shifted again. This time, they seemed to be following her. And at the end of the hall, a faint figure appeared, barely visible, but its presence was undeniable. It was watching her, and Clara knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning. Clara's breath caught in her throat as the figure in the hallway slowly stepped forward, its silhouette dark and undefined, yet unmistakably present. Her heart thudded loudly in her ears, each beat echoing through her chest like a war drum. She instinctively stepped back, feeling the cold wall press against her spine. The figure didn't move much, standing still at the far end of the hall. But Clara could feel its eyes, the weight of its gaze, like something far older, far more dangerous, was lurking just beneath the surface. It didn't belong here. Not in her house. Not in her world. She clutched her phone tightly in her hand, her knuckles white. Sarah's voice still echoed in her mind. Stay calm. Don't let this consume you. But it was getting harder and harder to keep the panic at bay. The figure remained motionless, but Clara could hear the faint whisper again, just like before, curling through the air like a snake, sending chills down her spine. You're too late, Clara, the voice whispered, its tone deep and hollow, vibrating with an unearthly power. She is beyond your reach now. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Clara's thoughts were a whirlwind, her mind struggling to piece together the fragments of what had happened, what was happening, and what she had yet to discover. Emma. A sharp noise broke through the tension, the sound of a door creaking. Clara's gaze snapped toward the source, her heart skipping a beat. The study door had opened by itself. No. Clara's legs felt weak, but she pushed herself forward, ignoring the growing fear clawing at her insides. She couldn't stop now, not when Emma was involved. As she walked toward the open door, the shadows in the hallway seemed to shift with her, as if moving, warping, growing, feeding off her every step. She reached the door and hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to turn back. But she couldn't. Not again. She stepped inside. The study was colder than before, the air thick with an almost oppressive heaviness. The figure, still distant, loomed just beyond the doorway, its form flickering like a mirage. Clara's eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of Emma, any clue that might explain what was happening. And then, she saw it. In the center of the room, a strange symbol had been drawn on the floor, intricate and ancient, glowing faintly in the dim light. It pulsed with an eerie energy, making the hairs on Clara's neck stand on end. As Clara moved closer to the symbol, she heard a sound, soft at first, like the rustling of paper. Her heart stopped when she realized what it was. Emma's voice, the young girl's voice, faint but unmistakable, echoed through the room, her words distorted, like a chant that had been twisted beyond recognition. Emma. Clara's heart ached as she called out her daughter's name. Emma, where are you? Please talk to me. There was no response, only the whispering sound that seemed to grow louder, more insistent. Clara's mind raced, piecing together what she had learned. The symbol, the shadows, the whispers, the connection to Emma, who had become more than just a girl in the eyes of this force. Suddenly, the figure at the door began to move, its shape warping, bending like liquid, until it was right in front of Clara. The air turned cold, impossibly cold, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. The thing before her wasn't human. It never had been. It opened its mouth, and a voice filled the room. A voice that wasn't Emma's, but eerily similar. You should have left it alone, Clara. You should have walked away. Clara stepped back, her body frozen with fear. What are you? What do you want with Emma? The figure's eyes glowed a sickly yellow, piercing through Clara's resolve. She is becoming the key, Clara. The key to a world beyond this one. The barriers are breaking, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Clara's mind reeled. The key? To what? Emma, is she alive? Clara choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure smiled, a cruel, twisted expression. She is more than alive, Clara. She is the beginning. The words hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. She took a step back, trying to process, but the figure advanced again, moving faster than she could react. I won't let you take her, Clara said, her voice trembling but defiant. I'll fight to the end. The figure paused, as if amused. You still don't understand. You can't fight what you can't see. Clara's pulse quickened. Her mind raced for a way out, for something she could do. But then she saw it. The faint glow of the symbol again, pulsing stronger with each second. The symbol. The connection. Suddenly, everything clicked. The answer was right in front of her. She had to stop the ritual. She had to stop whatever it was that had connected Emma to this world beyond. Without thinking, Clara lunged for the symbol, her hands shaking as she traced the glowing lines with her fingertips, desperate to erase them, to break the connection. As her fingers moved across the symbol, the room seemed to tremble, the shadows writhing as if in pain. The figure screamed, its form distorting, its face twisting in anger. No, you can't destroy it. She's mine. Clara's hands burned, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. With one final, desperate motion, she tore through the last part of the symbol, and the world seemed to explode in a flash of light. The figure let out one last, deafening scream as the light enveloped it. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. The shadows vanished. The room was still. Clara collapsed to her knees, breathless, heart pounding. The silence was deafening. She looked around, her vision blurry, and then she heard it. A soft, familiar voice calling her name. Mom. Clara looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. There, standing in the doorway, was Emma. She was real. She was alive. Clara stumbled to her feet, rushing to her daughter, her arms wrapping around her tightly. Tears flowed freely down her face. You're safe, Emma. You're safe. Emma looked up at her mother, a small, uncertain smile forming on her lips. What happened? Where are we? Clara held her daughter even tighter, overwhelmed with relief. The battle was over, but the journey, her journey, had just begun. If you had been Clara, would you have been able to fight back against such an overwhelming force to save your loved ones? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts with us in the comments, and thank you for joining us on this journey.